And how does your work impact the public?
We would oversee programs run out of the FDA, the Center for Disease Control, National Institutes of Health, the Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, and some of the waste, fraud, abuse work that we've done. We do work looking at abuse, neglect in nursing homes. So the work we did is protecting a family member that you might have living in a nursing home. One case is coming to mind in Tennessee, where we investigated a nursing home chain, a large nursing home chain, and we found that the services they were providing were worthless, and they were nursing home residents were incurring harm, medication errors, not turning for bed ulcers, not providing the wound care that is necessary. Some of these residents were found in beds soaked with urine. So it touches every American. The HHS programs that we oversee and the work we did really did protect people and programs.
Rob, last year at the Department of Defense, you found that $1 billion worth of equipment, like shoulder-fired missiles, kamikaze drones, and more that were sent to Ukraine were not properly tracked. That's just one example, but what are others that your office investigated?
So in the Ukraine area, for instance, we did something more than 4 dozen reports, programmatic oversight, looking at all aspects of U.S. security assistance to Ukraine. The example you mentioned is a great one because those are amongst the most sensitive items that the United States gave to Ukraine. And we made significant findings that the department had real challenges in tracking that stuff appropriately. We made recommendations to help them to improve. And then in our later reporting, we found they had improved. And the critical point is if I or my team had been seen as partisan or advancing whatever the administration's agenda was, we never would have been able to do that hard-hitting work.
As you both have said, you looked at abuse, fraud, waste. Elon Musk's team, known as the Department of Government Efficiency, is claiming that they're uncovering fraud, waste, and abuse. The same things both of you did in your role. So, Christy, how is DOJ's work different than yours?
The missions, the stated missions sound very similar, don't they? In order to prove a criminal case, that takes a long time. There are many steps from beginning to end. The work that we do is grounded in standards that govern how audits are done and investigations are done and evaluations are done. And it is painstaking and rigorous, the work that's put together, so that we may have the credibility that we have to make recommendations. And so the independence piece is also critical here because in order for us to do work that isn't viewed as partisan, we needed that independence. We are not an arm of the president. We don't implement policy. We point out where things aren't going well. We point out error rates. We recommend collection of overpayments. We identify where there are safeguards that aren't working to protect people.
In fact, the chair of the Council of Inspectors General actually reached out to the contacts at DOJ to try to engage with them and talk about what we do, because if you're interested in waste, fraud, and abuse, that's what our offices go after, right, and have gone after for years. And so he never heard back.
But speaking of DOJ and Elon Musk's SpaceX spacecraft company, as well as Starlink, the satellite company, have billions worth of defense contracts. And his team is also leading mass firings that are about to hit the Pentagon as early as this week. What's the risk, Rob, of a weakened Inspector General office as Elon Musk's team is taking over that agency?
I obviously can't comment on any specifics, but what I would say is, having been a prosecutor a long time and then in the IG community, is the problem with conflicts of interest is that they pervert the selection process. What we all want as Americans is to know that when decisions are made by government, they're made based on the merits, right? And the problem with conflicts of interest, wherever they occur, is that they change that calculus potentially, right? And that's why it's such a serious issue.
Laura, can I jump in here?
Yeah.
So you asked about how cuts might affect an IG office. I want to point to Medicare and Medicaid. Together, combined spending is circa $1.7 trillion annually. You need smart auditors, experienced auditors, investigators. Healthcare programs are incredibly complex. And to have these specialties within an OIG that know the programs, are closely, are part of the department, but we're independent, but we have connectivity to those programs and people. It allows us to do work that is hard-hitting, to deliver hard truths. And if you're reducing without regard, and you get rid of these watchdogs and the people that work for them, I fear for some of these programs, including oversight for Medicare and Medicaid.
When you take all of these actions together that we're talking about, the firing of more than 17 inspectors general, what do you think that this means for the long-term ability of offices like the ones that you led to provide a check on power?
It's deeply troubling, right? I mean, the message that gets sent is that there's not receptiveness to the sort of oversight that Christie's talking about.
We're the eyes and ears of the public, and it's important to remember that. So these are the kinds of things that, Americans, taxpayers, need to know about what IGs do.
Christy Grimm, Rob Storch, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you for having us. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Laura.
President Trump has tasked Elon Musk with an enormous job to search across the federal government and root out what he sees as inefficiencies and waste. But Musk's initial, often chaotic infiltration of various government departments has sparked alarm. It's also put the tech entrepreneur at center stage of the conservative movement. William Brigham looks at the history of the man at the center of these recent efforts to slash the federal bureaucracy and reimagine how the government functions.
If the bureaucracy is in charge, and then what meaning does democracy actually have?
Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, now standing in the most powerful office in the world.
The people voted for major government reform. There should be no doubt about that.
But how did this visionary tech leader, a man who once championed clean energy to save the planet and remained politically neutral for much of his career, end up working with President Donald Trump to dramatically scale back the size of the federal government?
Very rarely do you see a business leader essentially camping out in the White House trying to influence government spending, influence government regulations the way Elon Musk is doing.
The Wall Street Journal's Tim Higgins wrote a book on Musk and Tesla called Power Play.
There's also this kind of prove the world wrong mentality. He's got a huge chip on his shoulder. For so long, he's been told that what he was doing wasn't possible, that he was crazy, that he couldn't do it. And when you talk to him, you realize he likes proving people wrong.
He tends to think in terms of missions for himself. So those usually revolve around making a big impact for humanity.
Kate Conger covers Musk for the New York Times and co-authored the book Character Limit about Musk's takeover of Twitter, which he renamed X.
You see this with SpaceX, where he's trying to extend the life of humanity by establishing colonies on Mars. With Tesla, where he's trying to cut back on EV emissions and save the planet. And with X, too, he has given himself this mission of what he sees as protecting and saving online free speech. And his approach to the Trump administration is the same. He views this as an opportunity to save America and save democracy.
Musk grew up in a wealthy family in 1970s South Africa, then still in the midst of its racist apartheid regime. Walter Isaacson, who wrote a biography of Musk, told Amna Nawaz back in 2023 that Musk had a difficult childhood, struggling with autism spectrum disorder, being repeatedly bullied, and dealing with an allegedly emotionally abusive father.
Those demons, the dark things about being bullied as a kid, having psychological problems with his father, turn into drives, too. Drives that get him to be the only person who can get astronauts into orbit from the United States, or reuse rockets and land them, or bring us into the era of electric vehicles. But it also makes him a dark and mercurial character, and sometimes a crazed character at times.
Musk moved to the U.S. for college, where he studied physics and economics. But building web-based products, including an online banking service, is what earned him his first real fortune. It was around this time that Elon Musk turned his sights to two very different fields: the nascent electric car industry and the decades-old competition to conquer space. Musk quickly became a groundbreaking pioneer in both.
And launch of the SpaceX Falcon 9 rocket.
Musk founded the rocket company SpaceX in 2002 and quickly became a key partner with NASA on both manned and unmanned space flights. Musk invested in Tesla, then a fledgling electric car company, and would eventually become its CEO.
An electric car can be the best car in the world.
In a remarkably short span, Tesla became the world's most valuable auto company.
Time and time again, as you look at through kind of his career arc, it's his ability to build excitement around his vision that tends to help him win the day. It's tapping into this kind of primal idea, this excitement that people have about what is possible.
Another of his ventures is Starlink, a satellite internet provider that's used in over 100 countries and has large U.S. government contracts. As these various businesses have grown, so has his net worth. In 2021, he became the world's richest man. And yet, despite Musk's power, he has spent most of his career avoiding politics.
And I'm sort of moderate, sort of half Republican, half Democrat, if you will. But I'm somewhere in the middle. I guess I'm sort of socially liberal and fiscally conservative.
During the first Trump administration, Musk quit a presidential advisory board in protest after Trump withdrew from the Paris Climate Accord. But during the pandemic, his politics began a rightward turn. He hated being ordered to lock down his Tesla plants in California.
He was also, at the time, going through some things in his personal life. He had a child who was coming out as trans and beginning a gender transition.
Musk often blamed his child's transition on so-called woke ideology.
They call it dead naming for a reason.
Yeah,
All right, so the reason it's called dead naming is because your son is dead, killed by the woke mind virus.
Additionally, in 2021, Musk was excluded from a Biden administration summit on electric cars because Tesla had blocked unionization at its facilities.
That's something that Musk has typically resisted in his factories. So Tesla was excluded, and that really bothered Musk.
Over the years, Musk spent increasing amounts of time on Twitter, shooting out messages at all hours of the day and night. Everything from vulgar jokes to business updates to memes that critics called racist and sexist. Even his intention to buy the platform outright. He first tried to walk that back, but then purchased Twitter for $44 billion in 2022, promising to create a digital town square, but quickly taking actions that echo his work today in Washington.
Musk's takeover of Twitter was really chaotic, I think, by any measure. He came into the company and very quickly wanted to slash its budget, and that meant getting rid of everything from a large number of workers to getting rid of real estate to firing the janitorial staff who were cleaning the offices. Really, no item in Twitter's budget went untouched.
Musk changed the platform's policies on hate speech, and when analysts claimed that vitriol then flourished on the renamed X, advertisers balked and the company's value slid. In characteristic fashion, Musk had no time for his critics.
If somebody's going to try to blackmail me with advertising, blackmail me with money, go f*** yourself. But go f*** yourself. Is that clear?
Meanwhile, colleagues and board members at his companies reported that they were increasingly concerned about Musk's mental health and drug use, specifically the drug ketamine, which Musk says he's prescribed to treat depressive episodes. He began leaning even further into politics, backing Republican candidates during the 2022 midterms and labeling Democrats the party of division and hate. And he shared extremist hard-right views on X, endorsing the so-called Great Replacement theory that argues Democrats want open borders to replace white voters, and he elevated anti-Semitic conspiracy theories. Though he initially didn't support Trump's re-election, saying he was too old to return to the White House, after last year's assassination attempt, he changed his mind.
The true test of someone's character is how they behave under fire. And we had one president who couldn't climb a flight of stairs, and another who was fist-pumping after getting shot.
Musk formed a super PAC to support Trump's bid, donating more than $200 million of his own money.
This election, I think, is going to decide the fate of America, and along with the fate of America, the fate of Western civilization.
Trump, in turn, embraced Musk on the trail and promised a role for him in a second administration.
I will create a government efficiency commission tasked with conducting a complete financial and performance audit of the entire federal government and making recommendations for drastic reforms.
Following Trump's win, Musk continued to turn heads by supporting a far-right political party in Germany that's been accused of resurrecting Nazi-era ideology and speaking to one of its rallies. Now, as Musk leads this effort to scrutinize and cut federal agencies from within, his own companies retain massive multi-billion-dollar government contracts. Musk has resisted any financial disclosures and claims there's no conflict with his cost-cutting efforts. And while there are numerous court challenges to his efforts, Musk continues to enjoy the full support of President Trump.
The team we have is really unbelievable. But those executive orders, I sign them, and now they get passed on to him and his group and other people, and they're all getting done. We're getting them done.
For the PBS NewsHour, I'm William Brangham.
President Trump reportedly plans to fire the board of the U.S. Postal Service and place the independent agency under the control of the Commerce Department, a move that could be the first step in privatizing the service. Jacob Bogage of The Washington Post reported on the issue and discussed more with Jeff Bennett.
So what are your sources telling you about what the administration is planning and what it could ultimately mean for the U.S. Postal Service?
Well, step one here would be to place the Postal Service, take it out of independent status, and embed it inside the Commerce Department. Commerce Secretary Howard Lutnick was just sworn in today, and we've reported over the course of months that he's been engaging with then President-elect and now President Trump about privatizing this agency. So taking it out of that independent status would be step one. And step two would be leadership changes. Postmaster General Louis DeJoy announced he plans to retire soon, and the Board of Governors can be fired for cause by the president. That could be another step.
Well, this will certainly lead to legal challenges. What have experts been telling you about the authority the president would have to dissolve the Postal Service leadership and then effectively move it to the Commerce Department?
So the Postal Service has to have a board of governors. These are bipartisan individuals appointed by the president, confirmed by the Senate, and then they together select or can remove the Postmaster General. There are powers that the Postal Service has on things like service, on things like rates and prices, on major investments that can only be made by the governors. So you have to have a board in place. And that's kind of what's complicating this for the White House a little bit. How do you take these individuals who can only be removed for cause from an agency that by law is independent? You can't legally move it into the Commerce Department. How do you bring that under the control of the White House? That's a legally dubious question.
Well, President Trump, as you well know, he's long mused about privatizing the Postal Service. And as you mentioned, the Commerce Secretary was sworn in today. And here's what the president had to say about USPS during that ceremony.
Well, we want to have a post office that works well and doesn't lose massive amounts of money. And we're thinking about doing that. And it'll be a form of a merger, but it'll remain the Postal Service. And I think it'll operate a lot better than it has been over the years. It's been just a tremendous loser for this country. Tremendous amounts of money are being lost.
It's undeniable that the Postal Service has been losing money. It had a lot to do with the way its pensions were organized. It's lost more than $9 billion in the most recent fiscal year. Does that strengthen the case for privatization?
That's a difficult question because it's an ideological question. So let's look at this from the big picture. The United States has had a postal service longer than we've been a country. It was founded in 1775. Obviously, the country was founded in 1776. Until 1970, the Postal Service didn't have a profit motive. Its motive was to serve people all across the country with equal and reliable service. We changed that in 1970 it's a long story we don't need to get into right now, but we changed that to be more of like a crown corporation or a government-sponsored corporation. So what do we lose without an independent postal service? Well, this is an agency that belongs to all of us. It doesn't belong to the White House. Because it's independent, it has an obligation to serve all of us equally, reach everybody's address with the same service and the same pricing. A privatized postal service, or one in which mail delivery becomes political, will not have those same motivations.
To your point, in many cases in parts of the country, it's the only mail carrier, the only mail service. And e-commerce giants like Amazon rely on the Postal Service for those last mile deliveries. So how could that affect the mail-in packages that Americans get?
This is a story that is obviously not going away. And Jeff, you and I know that really well from having covered it for so long. So there's a term that folks should get to know right now, and that's co-opetition. Cooperation and competition. Private express carriers like Amazon, FedEx, UPS use the Postal Service to carry their least profitable packages. The Postal Service has to go to everyone's address 6, sometimes 7 days a week. They've got to go over the hill and around the bend, even if it doesn't make money. Amazon, FedEx, UPS don't have to do that. So they give these packages to the Postal Service. They're competitors, but they leverage each other for business. That is extremely, extremely profitable for the Postal Service. They can't survive without that co-opetition.
And final question, Jacob. You mentioned the Postmaster General, Louis DeJoy, is stepping down. He's halfway into his 10-year term. Based on your reporting, do you know why he's stepping down now?
Not precisely. I mean, we look at the last fiscal quarter. It's the first time the Postal Service has been in the black, except for some like mandatory pension and healthcare costs since the height of the COVID crisis. It's a big win for his 10-year plan. A lot of this, the stuff that he has in the works has been, moving rather successfully. A bumpy rollout, but it's been rolling out nonetheless and being implemented. Louis DeJoy, and I've spoken to him numerous times. He's a really successful businessman. He's in his late 60s. He has adult children. He's retired from businesses that he ran or helped lead multiple times, and running the Postal Service, believe it or not, was a retirement gig for him. He's 5 years into this job, and that's about the time frame he promised when he took it. Is there more to this story about why he's stepping down? I would be willing to bet on that, and that's something that I'll keep reporting on. But I also know that this is around the time frame that he was looking to leave anyway.
Jacob Bogage of the Washington Post, thanks for being with us.
Thanks, Jeff.
As the Trump administration continues to downsize and dismantle many government agencies, the Department of Education could be next on the chopping block. At stake are resources and support for more than 7 million students with disabilities who depend on the agency to ensure access to a free public education. And that's at a time when they're already struggling to receive quality schooling because of a shortage of special education teachers. Judy Woodruff filed this report as part of our series Disability Reframed.
It'll go. 14-year-old Spencer Nichols loves taking care of his farm animals at home in Macon, Georgia. It's a break after a long school day where he has little autonomy. Spencer has Down syndrome. Almost the entire day, he's in a small classroom with other students with disabilities.
It's kind of a rough day for me, but maybe I'll learn some days, and my mom helps me a lot.
His mother, Pam Nichols, says he's denied the same chance to succeed as his non-disabled peers. She says he can't pick his own elective classes and isn't progressing like he should.
And there's 6 students, and they're all taught at the same level. I have to challenge the school to go to the library and use the data from the testing to say Spencer can read at a 3rd or 4th grade level. These are appropriate books. It stalls his development, and it doesn't make him necessarily ready for society.
I love my family.
Pam says Spencer should be in more general education classes, but his middle school lacks the resources and staff to support students with disabilities.
Unfortunately, his one class is science, that he is allowed to be in the gen ed classroom. They had a science test. I messaged the teacher, it was after school, and I said, what am I supposed to be focused on for Spencer? And she said, we will have Spencer color during the science test. I said, well, you don't understand. I want him to learn this.
In 1975, President Gerald Ford signed a landmark federal law that gave students with disabilities the right to a free public education in the least restrictive environment. When Congress passed the law, it said the federal government would cover 40% of the average per-student cost. But 50 years later, federal funding sits at just about 10%. So the majority of the money comes from state and local sources, which has stretched thin public schools required by law to provide this education.
They aren't able to actually fund appropriate one-on-one services for these kids. Some kids who absolutely need this in order to make progress in the curriculum.
David Bateman is a special education researcher at the American Institutes for Research. He says more federal funding is important, but so is how school leadership thinks about students with disabilities.
The attitude and tenor that a building level administrator sets for their building flows through everything. If everyone treats it as these kids are part of our class, they're going to be part of what's going on, it's just an accepted thing, that sets a tone.
About 20 miles south of Atlanta in Jonesboro, Georgia, 17-year-old Todd Estes says he's been in schools where he doesn't feel valued. Todd has ADHD and a learning disability which affects how he comprehends new concepts. How do you think about your learning? What do you think your learning style is?
I just learn slower. I just need to learn it like 3 or 4 times before I get it.
His mother, Priscilla Estes, says some of his general education teachers weren't well trained to approach Todd's learning differences.
They called me because Todd was underneath the table in class crying and would not come out from under the table. I knew that adults would say things to them instead of encouraging them, discourage them, label them. It hinders the learning going forward because if you hear that you are a bad student or you cannot learn, which my kids were actually told.
By teachers?
By teachers.
So in 6th grade, Priscilla enrolled Todd in private school, where he gets some accommodations, like longer test times and delayed deadlines. But many private schools aren't required to give special education and aren't typically monitored by the U.S. Department of Education for compliance.
I could not see Todd going to the next public school in the 6th grade, dealing with a larger amount of students in the school. And when you deal with a larger amount of students, then you have to also deal with teachers who are more stressed.
She says at least now Todd has smaller class sizes and more one-on-one instruction, something he lacked because of the shortage of qualified special ed teachers.
I'd like it to be closed immediately. Look, the Department of Education's a big con job.
It's why David Bateman says President Trump's reported plans for the U.S. Department of Education could further overwhelm public schools that need more support.
They would then probably have to provide much, much larger class sizes, cut away some of the extracurricular activities, cut away some of the other things that we think about as part of the education, they would have to cut.
He says it could also end a critical oversight mechanism that ensures states use federal funds correctly.
The federal government, from the U.S. Department of Education, flows money to the states, who then flows the money to the local school district. And in exchange for that local school district receiving this money, they have to provide justification to the state that they're doing what they're supposed to be doing.
And it could affect resources and training for special education teachers. Last year, about 70% of public schools reported special education teacher vacancies. About half of those teachers leave the profession within the first 5 years of teaching.
They're just like any other student. They just require a little bit more attention.
Priscilla Green is in her 4th year teaching students with disabilities in a classroom with other non-disabled students. She modifies their lessons and sometimes teaches small groups. She says it's her mother, a special education teacher for 20 years, who inspires her.
Seeing a student who struggled and then to see them win, to see them have a breakthrough. For me, it's so rewarding. It's the best job I've ever had.
Her career, though, comes with its challenges. She often has to take her work home, which takes time away from her family. How many hours do you work at home a week?
If I had to count, I would say at least 7 to 10 hours a week. When I first started education, my caseload was about 6 to 7 students. Now we're up to 12, and when you have a bigger caseload, that's more data, more meetings, more one-on-one support.
She says paying bonuses to typically underpaid special ed teachers might bring more people to the field, but support from school leadership is what keeps them there.
For those challenges to be addressed, more time, allowing us more time to focus on our kids.
And she says so would giving teachers feedback with how to address behavioral concerns.
We're dealing with a lot of children who are struggling to self-regulate, going back to COVID and being in the house for a year and not really learning those problem-solving skills. And some of the behaviors are just a reaction because they can't grasp the materials. When you put all of that together in a classroom, it's difficult
to help our students with their learning and behavior.
A Georgia Department of Education program aims to fill the gap by training early career special education teachers to maximize learning time.
Great job, guys. We did a
24-year-old Gracie Cottrell is in the program. It includes a mixed reality lab where teachers can practice speaking to online student avatars and hear feedback from their peers.
It also just allows us to make mistakes in a low-pressure environment where, you know, if you don't really know what to say or you say the wrong thing, no harm, no foul in that situation where you're really just practicing being a teacher. What's this sound? Oi.
She says that training helps in her real classroom. But as the demand for special education teachers rises, many schools are struggling to keep up. It's why Pam Nichols in Macon says more resources, not less, should be dedicated to students with disabilities. She says President Trump's proposal to cut the Department of Education makes them even more vulnerable.
It's scary. For me, in Macon, the public school system is the only option for Spencer. We've learned from the days when children like Spencer were institutionalized and they didn't learn to read. Through early intervention services, they now are reading, they are doing math. These can be very meaningful contributors to society. We just need to give them a little bit of extra, and it will go a long, long way.
And Spencer has ambitions of his own, owning a home, and one day working in the restaurant industry. Pam says she will keep fighting for him to get the quality education that will get him there. Yeah. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Judy Woodruff in Macon, Georgia.
The Internal Revenue Service is in the process of terminating more than 6,000 employees, around 6% of the agency's overall workforce. It comes as Elon Musk's DOGE team continues its efforts to cut the federal workforce. Our White House correspondent, Laura Barone-Lopez, has more on what this could mean.
These firings come in the middle of tax filing season and target relatively recent hires. Experts warn that this change will hurt the IRS's ability to investigate ultra-wealthy who are evading taxes. Today, in a New York Times opinion piece, former IRS commissioners who served under both Democratic and Republican presidents, including Ronald Reagan and Donald Trump, called the mass layoffs a mistake. They write that the firings, quote, will shift the burden of funding the government from people who shirk their taxes to the honest people who pay them. And they added that it will impede efforts by the IRS to simplify the tax filing process for everyone. To discuss, I'm joined by one of the authors, Daniel Werfel, former commissioner of the IRS who resigned last month, more than 2 years earlier than expected. Mr. Werfel, thank you so much for joining us.
Good to be here.
An IRS commissioner from every administration, essentially from Ronald Reagan to present, signed on to this op-ed. Why do you see these layoffs as a mistake?
Well, we got together as former commissioners and we tried to understand why this was being undertaken. And we understood that it was being undertaken in the interest of cost efficiency. And this made no sense to us. All of us, all the previous commissioners have experience in the private sector. And from our experience, we know that the bottom line is not just about cutting costs, it's also about maintaining and increasing revenue. So by cutting the IRS, and depleting the ability of the U.S. government to collect revenue, you really are becoming less cost efficient, not more cost efficient. And we wanted to put that right up in front in our op-ed and ask the question, why cut the part of the government that collects the revenue if you're going to try to be more cost efficient?
What kind of impact could this have on Americans, especially in this season, and will it make it easier for tax cheats?
Well, it's my understanding that they're really focusing on those that are collecting overdue or balance due taxes. And so immediately you will see a reduction in the revenue coming in to fund the U.S. government. But also a big layoff like this right in the middle of tax filing season is likely to be very disruptive. And it's absolutely important that the IRS during this time is answering the phone, is maintaining those appointments in the walk-in centers, and really important, processing tax returns and getting people their refunds as quickly as possible. And all the commissioners, we all talked about the fact that during filing season, we try to not increase risk. We try to maintain a lot of stability to make sure that people are getting their refunds on time. And a giant layoff like this is bound to increase risk, and it's very concerning.
The White House says that Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent thinks that there should be more firings on top of the current ones. And all of this, Elon Musk says, is being done under the banner of fraud and waste, which you mentioned. Do you think that there's a case for streamlining this agency? What's your response to those claims of fraud?
I certainly think there's an opportunity to modernize. And during the transition, when I was at the IRS, I talked to the Trump transition team about opportunities to automate and add technology. But there's work to be done before you start terminating employees, because you're going to lose performance if you're not ready to automate while you're cutting staff. So really, I do think there's opportunity in the future to streamline the IRS, but it has to be done thoughtfully. I wouldn't do it during filing season. And you raised the question about fraud. There is absolutely too much fraud in the government. There's too many tax scams. And the IRS workforce has worked tirelessly to try to address that fraud and address those tax scams. And there's a lot of expertise and people at the IRS that you want to maintain to help protect people from these scams and to protect taxpayer dollars. But here's the thing about fraud and error, and I've been involved in fraud and error for describing. Tough questions need to be presented on what does that mean in terms of the information you're going to collect from Americans and businesses, and does that mean delays in payments that are going out?
I want to ask you about Elon Musk and his Doge workers getting access to the IRS system, which contains personal tax information that you're talking about for individuals and businesses. Why should taxpayers care that Musk, who's unelected, who says that he's policing his own conflicts of interest, have Why should they care about him having access to such material? And who typically has access to it?
What the government does when somebody comes in, whether it's an employee or a contractor, and says, I need access to this information, the government just doesn't hand it over. They ask questions. They ask questions like, why do you need this information? How long do you need it for to achieve your objective? And what is your proven trustworthiness to have this information? And that's exactly what the government is doing. People are coming in and asking for broad amount of information about every taxpayer, your bank account information, your address, your household makeup. And before that information is just handed over en masse, civil servants in the government are saying, okay, tell us why you need it and for how long you need it. And if the answer doesn't match up, if the answer that comes across is, well, we really don't have a good explanation of why we need everybody's information, and we don't know how long we need it for, well, then these civil servants are going to ask more questions before they hand the data over. And as a citizen, where my information is in those systems and your information, I'm glad that the government is asking those questions before they just knee-jerk hand the data over.
Daniel Werfel, former IRS commissioner, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
In February, President Trump fired the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Air Force General C.Q. Brown, breaking with decades of precedent. It came as part of a broader purge of senior military leaders. For perspective, Jeff Bennett spoke to retired Rear Admiral James McPherson, a former Undersecretary of the Army who served as the Army's General Counsel during the first Trump administration.
So let's start with President Trump's decision to fire the chairman of the Joint Chiefs, General C.Q. Brown. Brown is the first in the job since 2007 to not serve a full term. And there's the added detail that Brown, a four-star general, is being replaced with a now retired three-star general, Dan Kane, whose military service does not include any of the key assignments that were identified in law as prerequisites for the job. He'll need to get a waiver. So how do you interpret this pick?
Well, it's not surprising that he fired General Brown. That was rumored in the media many times before the inauguration and then even afterwards. Perhaps even greater surprise was his firing the Chief of Naval Operations, Admiral Franchetti, who was the first female admiral that the Navy had as its Chief of Naval Operations. It speaks of a profound concern that perhaps the president is putting in place individuals who he can be assured would be loyal to him and not loyal to the Constitution or loyal to the rule of law. That's the greatest concern I think many people have.
And there's also his decision to fire the military's top lawyers, those judge advocates general known as JAGs. You had a 25-year career in the Navy, also served as its top lawyer in uniform. First, help us understand what those lawyers do in providing independent legal advice to senior military leaders.
It's profoundly disappointing to hear the Secretary of Defense describe the men and women of the service's Judge Advocate General's Corps, some of the finest attorneys that this country has, many of whom forego lucrative civilian careers to serve their country. They answer their country's call. They truly are embracing a lifestyle of service. And to hear the Secretary of Defense describe them in a term that's not only crude but vulgar is just intolerable and quite frankly shameless. But it also evidences a lack of understanding of what a judge advocate on the staff of a warfare commander does, what their role is. Their role is advising that warfare commander as that commander puts together an operational plan. Their role is not one of a roadblock, but one that facilitates the successful completion of a mission within the bounds of the law. They are not the ones that, if you will, say shoot, don't shoot. They're not the ones that promulgate the rules of engagement that guide our warriors, but they advise the commander, who is the one that makes those decisions.
Secretary Hegseth has often spoke about restoring what he calls a warrior ethos to a military that he views as having become too soft and bureaucratic. So when he says that he views the JAGs as obstacles and removing them would ostensibly remove an obstacle, what are the practical implications of that?
Well, there's a common denominator among the three judge advocate generals of the services that he removed. They were all selected, they were all nominated by President Biden, and they were confirmed by the Senate in the Biden administration. So clearly, the commonality is they came into office during the Biden administration, and that's why the secretary wanted to get rid of them, so he could put his own people in there. What's interesting is he directed the service secretaries to nominate names for him. The law requires that the service secretary convene a board, and that board consists of senior officers, line officers, who will review the records of the eligible officers, that is captains and colonels, and make a recommendation to the service secretary of the next Judge Advocate General. The service secretary forwards that to the White House, and it's the president's decision. So it's not going to be the Secretary of Defense's decision. It's going to be a decision based upon, again, a recommendation that comes from a board. Something also that Secretary Hegseth, in his time with the Fox News interview, seemed not to understand.
And yet, a president has the right to assemble a team of military leaders as he chooses. Supporters of the president have been quick to point out that Truman ousted Douglas MacArthur, Obama ousted Stanley McChrystal. Do they have a point, or do you see something missing in their justification of President Trump's actions?
I see something missing, and what I see missing is they didn't take issue with any decision that the officers made. They didn't. There was no misconduct involved. They simply dismissed them because they weren't, if you will, perceived as being loyal to the president. My fear is that they're putting people in place when that fateful day arrives, and the suggestion is made, as it was in the Oval Office, should we just shoot him in the legs? My fear is that there won't be a Secretary Esper or General Milley who says, no, Mr. President, we can't. My fear is there'll be officers in the room that say, sure, we'll shoot him in the legs.
Admiral McPherson, thanks again for joining us this evening. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Among the executive orders that Trump signed last month was one stating that the Pentagon must move to change the policy allowing transgender Americans to decorate a Navy pilot. She's also transgender and the lead plaintiff in one of the legal challenges against the Trump executive order. She recently spoke with our Lisa Desjardins.
Among the executive orders that Trump signed last month was one stating that transgender Americans cannot satisfy the rigorous standards necessary for military service, and that the Pentagon must move to change the policy allowing them to serve. One of those who could be affected by that joins us now. Commander Emily Schilling is a decorated Navy pilot with over 60 combat missions and high-risk. The lead plaintiff in one of the legal challenges against the Trump executive order. Commander, thank you for joining us. Secretary Hegseth still has about a week or so to meet the deadline for this new policy and exactly define what it will be. But as we wait for that, have you seen any effect from this executive order, either yourself personally or in the military?
Yeah, Lisa, first, thank you for having us on tonight. These views are my own and do not necessarily reflect those of the U.S. Navy or the Department of Defense. You know, so far, we have thousands of transgender troops currently serving in our armed forces today, and they are deployed across the world, embedded in units today. And these executive orders and the discussion around transgender service has an immediate effect on them. From overzealous commanders who are taking executive orders as action to just a detriment to the morale of these individuals and their ability to focus on the mission that they've signed up to volunteer for.
You are the lead plaintiff in this lawsuit. What are you asking for? What would you like to happen?
You know, I just want to keep serving. I have served for nearly 20 years. I'm a combat aviator, test pilot, and I've served with honor and distinction. And all I'm asking is for myself and the thousands of other transgender troops just like me to be allowed to continue to do what we want to do, which is serve the American public.
President Trump has said that this is about the culture of the military and readiness. Here's what he told Republicans last month.
And next, to ensure that we have the most lethal fighting force in the world, we will get transgender ideology the hell out of our military. It's going to be gone.
Commander, how do you respond to that?
You know, the first thing that you learn as an officer and a leader is the first rule of leadership is to take care of your people. That means take care of all of your people. And when you take care of your people, you have an effective, combat-ready force. We don't necessarily get to choose who's going to volunteer to serve our nation. We are a melting pot in America, and our armed forces represent that great diversity of our country.
Now, those who support the ban have said that They point to some physical conditions that the military can use to exclude people from service, like maybe severe asthma. That's something you hear a lot. Do you think that that's at all a legitimate argument here, and what is your response?
Yeah, Lisa, sure. There are other medical conditions and healthcare that preclude people from service. But 73% of us, 73% of transgender individuals are senior enlisted in the military. That means that they've been in for over 12 years. When somebody injures their knee or injures their back, we send them for health care. And they're down for a little bit of time, and we get them the health care they need, and then we return them to combat. We return them to the force. It's the same case in this instance. People just need health care, and it's our duty to give them that and return them to the fight.
I want to talk about a bigger picture issue here, which is DEI as well, which sort of overlaps with some of these executive orders. And conservatives have said, when there's too much focus on identities, that it leads to a less unified military force. How do you see the role of DEI, which now President Trump has said cannot be enforced in military and other agencies? But how do you see that role? Did the military ever go too far with that, with all the trainings, or was it useful? How do you see that debate?
So first, let's say what DEI stands for. That's diversity, equity, and inclusion. And when you actually say the words, you realize what we're trying to do. We're trying to create an environment where our service members feel like they belong, that they're with their battle buddies, that they're with somebody they can trust and count on when they're in the foxhole. When you create an inclusive environment for others, they bring their whole self. If they have to leave some portion of them at home, you're only getting 80% of the individual. When they're allowed to bring all of themselves, they end up being better service members and they end up being better leaders. For myself, when I was able to start showing up to work as my full self, across the board, I got better reviews, I excelled as a leader, and actually I ended up promoting to commander with merit reorder to #1 as a transgender woman in the U.S. Navy.
You are a decorated service member. You operate at a very high level. But what can you tell us about those thousands of other transgender members of the service? I could see conservatives saying, oh, Commander Schilling is an exception.
Yeah, so transgender individuals are no different than any other American. We're going to have those individuals who excel. We have those that are mediocre. We are no different. But across the board, the thing that stands out is how resilient these service members are. Think about how hard it is to come into a service or to come out as transgender in the current environment. Aren't those the type of people that you want to go into combat for you? That amount of courage and that amount of bravery to just be who they are and to show up fully?
In our last half minute or so, you are a military leader, you're a combat veteran. What do you think is at stake for the military right now in the directions it chooses?
I think it's reputation. We have allowed individuals to serve from all different creeds, all different backgrounds. And every single time that we have tried to exclude a group of individuals, whether it was by race, religion, gender, we have always been proven wrong in the end. The same arguments are made time and time again, and we're going to have to learn that those same arguments are false once again.
Commander Emily Schilling, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Lisa.
For the last 2 years, PBS News special correspondent Judy Woodruff has traveled the country, exploring the roots of America's divisions over race, religion, culture, wealth, and more for her series, America at a Crossroads. In her latest installment, she spoke with political scientist Robert Putnam, who has spent decades studying these divides and how we might find our way back to a more unified nation.
Fundamentally undermining the American constitutional order. Changing us from being a democracy.
Now 84 years old, Harvard professor emeritus Robert Putnam has spent decades studying how American society evolved from one that, however flawed, was steadily moving towards greater connection, equality, cooperation, and cohesion.
Ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
To one that in more recent decades has been defined by growing isolation, distrust, inequality, and political discord.
My recent election is a mandate to completely and totally reverse a horrible betrayal and all of these many betrayals that have taken place.
To the point that Putnam now worries these forces threaten to upend the Constitution.
They're talking about not obeying court orders. I mean, come on. That's the court system, better or worse, is currently the last bulwark of our democracy. So we're awfully close to breaking the bounds that have kept our democracy safe. How many in the room are on a bowling league?
Paul Salmon first profiled Robert Putnam on this program 30 years ago, when Putnam published his essay, Bowling Alone, which would become his groundbreaking book, showing that since the high water mark of the 1960s, Americans had become steadily more isolated, and that this was weakening civic engagement and undermining our democracy.
That is a primary cause of the Trump phenomenon. That's true, you can see it in the data, but you don't have to trust me. Steve Bannon has said publicly, back in the day when they were trying to figure out how they could get Trump elected, they read this book by this crazy academic called Bowling Alone, and that guided I'm not proud of this, but that guided their strategy, because they thought, just as I had been writing, that when people are socially isolated, as we are increasingly, they become vulnerable to populist appeals. So that's the first point. We are increasingly socially isolated, and that makes our country vulnerable to I was going to say fascism. That isn't quite true, but it's close to being true. The poor kids who live here now are living in a completely different universe for the rest of the kids in town.
In 2015, Putnam chronicled another major concern with his book, Our Kids, the growing gap between increasingly well-off, college-educated Americans and everyone else, now one of the greatest predictors of who supports Donald Trump.
Well, until we fix the underlying problem, basically there's two pairs of underlying problems, increasing social isolation and especially in the non-college educated part of our population, we're constantly vulnerable to that same kind of pressure for the same reason that we were vulnerable when he came along.
I met Putnam last week just off Washington Square Park in Manhattan at Judson Memorial Church, founded in 1890 by American Baptist minister Edward Judson, with money donated by John D. Rockefeller, with a mission to provide aid and comfort to the poor immigrants living in the squalid tenements nearby.
You come and have a place that is beautiful to look at away from what they were experiencing in the tenement houses.
Today, Putnam sees strong parallels between that era, the post-Civil War period known as the Gilded Age, and our own.
America was extremely polarized. Politics then was very tribal, just like it is now. Inequality was very high then. That was the last time the gap between rich and poor was anywhere near as large as it is now. So, very polarized, very unequal, very socially disconnected, very socially isolated, because then the industrialization meant that millions of people had just moved from a village in Sicily or a village in Iowa, to the big city. They'd left their family and friends and connections behind, so they were very disconnected, just like we're very disconnected, and they were very self-centered, if I can put it that way. Americans in that period were focused on I and not on the we.
Putnam's most recent book, The Upswing, describes these many parallels in detail and how out of those challenges came an explosion of new civic, religious, and social groups, the Boy Scouts, the NAACP, the Rotary Club, the General Federation of Women's Clubs, as well as the many reforms that came to be known as the Progressive Era, the federal income tax, women's suffrage, labor rights, and more, changing the course of the following decades.
All of a sudden, we began to become more equal, less polarized, more connected, and a greater sense that we're all in this together.
What did they do?
Well, they're both positive and negative lessons, actually, I have to say. And I thought for sure, I knew what would change first. I thought it was the economics, and I thought maybe the economics would change first. We'd begin to have more equal economically, and then our politics would improve, and so on. The one thing that data show is that's not true. Economics was the last thing to change. So then what was the first thing to change? And to my shock, It was cultural change. It was a moral revival, is the way I want to put it. People began to say, wait a minute, it's not all about us. We have obligations to other people.
One example he points to was the Triangle Shirtwaist Factory fire, just a few blocks from where we were speaking. In 1911, a fire broke out there in a sweatshop, trapping garment workers locked inside. Dozens jumped to their deaths. 146 women died in all, shocking the conscience of the city and beyond, including a young woman named Frances Perkins, who was having tea with friends nearby.
Up to that point, she had been thinking of herself as a debutante, and she said, that's evil. We have obligations to those people. Almost immediately, she became a social reformer right here in New York City, and eventually she became FDR's Secretary of Labor, the first woman cabinet member in American history, and it was all because of that moral moment in which she realized she had obligations to other people. And that's one example among what was happening a lot. I sort of think that it's going to be hard for us to turn things around in America until we begin to recognize we have obligations to other people that are at least as important as ours.
This is a film about why you should join a club, and why the fate of America depends on it.
Putnam's life story and work have been recently captured in the documentary Join or Die, encouraging people across the country, especially young people, to again seek out organization and connection in their own communities, to find issues they're passionate about, and to affect change from the bottom up, like the progressives did, but to also go beyond that movement to include Americans of all colors, backgrounds, and beliefs. One of your points is that this is something that happened at the grassroots level. It didn't come out of Washington. It didn't come from the White House handed down.
Or Harvard or whatever, yes.
Do you believe that the ingredients are there for that to happen again?
It is happening now. I mean, not enough of it. We need to, well, your show, this whole series is doing that. You and I both know from our own personal experience that this is happening, and a lot more of it is needed. But that's where it'll begin. I am not a determinist. I don't think any of these things are guaranteed to happen. I don't think it was guaranteed to happen last time. I don't think there was some, big cycle in the skies or God or something that was saying, oh, there will be a progressive era here. I think it happened because a smallish number of young people around between 1900 and 1910 decided, like, Frances Perkins, right here, she decided then she was going to help change America. It was not inevitable. It is not inevitable this time, but it could happen. That's why I'm saying the distinction between will it happen. I don't know whether it will happen, but I know it could happen because it did happen.
And that will be the focus of many of our stories this year. For the PBS NewsHour, I'm Judy Woodruff in New York.
That's it for our digital coverage ahead of Donald Trump's address to a joint session of Congress. We turn now to PBS News' special broadcast coverage of the president's speech. I'm Dima Zain. Thanks so much for spending your evening with us.
This program was made possible by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you.
And welcome to PBS News Live special coverage of President Trump's address to a joint session of Congress and the Democrats' response. I'm Amna Nawaz.
And I'm Jeff Bennett. The first 6 weeks of President Trump's second term have seen an administration moving at warp speed. He has cut tens of thousands of people from the government workforce, deported thousands more, upended U.S. alliances, and and signed dozens of executive orders, many of which are being hashed out in court right now.
The president is on Capitol Hill tonight to tout what he has done and to lay out his plans of what's still to come. We're looking now at live video from inside the House chamber. That's where the president will be speaking just moments from now. And of course, his Republican Party has unified control of that government with majorities in both the House and the Senate. But the president will address a country that's deeply divided. In just a moment, you're going to hear the traditional announcement from the House Sergeant at Arms, and President Trump will make his way down the aisle. On Capitol Hill tonight is our White House correspondent, Laura Barone-Lopez. So, Laura, tell us what the overall message is that the White House wants to get across tonight.
Well, the White House is saying that their message tonight is about renewing America, and we do have some of the excerpts based on the prepared remarks that the president is expected to give. He's expected to blame his predecessor, Joe Biden, for the price of eggs, and he's going to say that one of his major focuses is on defeating inflation. That despite the fact, Amna, that the president just instituted some new tariffs on Canada and Mexico that both conservative and liberal economists alike say will increase the price for consumers in the country, especially on vegetables and fruits and other goods. The president is going to also say, though, that one of his highest priorities is to provide relief to Americans, to workers across the country, even though, again, we have been hearing from a number of workers across the country, especially federal workers in the past few weeks, saying that they've been stunned by being fired, by the cuts that are being made by Elon Musk across the board. And speaking of Elon Musk, he is in the chamber tonight, Amna.
It's our White House correspondent, Laura Barone-Lopez, on Capitol Hill tonight. Laura, thank you. We'll check back in with you in just a few.
And our Capitol Hill correspondent, Lisa Desjardins, is in the House chamber tonight. Lisa, we can hear you. We can't see you because you have what is a coveted position just above the House rostrum there. So you have eyes on the floor. Give us a sense of what you're seeing, and also let us know what you've been hearing from lawmakers about their expectations for this speech this evening as we watch the First Lady, Melania Trump, make her way to her seat there.
That's right. It is my great privilege to be in this position. And you're right, the crowd is now, the Republicans on their feet, cheering for First Lady Melania Trump. The Trump family is near her in that same box. We do not see Barron Trump, but the rest of the Trump children are here. And Elon Musk, as Laura reported, is here. I have to say, he's almost hard to recognize because he's wearing a suit, a tie, and no hat. He is not in a seat. He is standing in the aisle right now. He also receives applause when he walks into the room tonight. Now, you'll notice Democrats right now are remaining seated as the First Lady greets her guests. You will notice Democratic women wearing pink. That is their bright form of protest tonight and solidarity with one another. This room really is two different planets between Republicans, so excited, Democrats almost in mourning over this moment.
Lisa Desjardins, our thanks to you as we watch members of the cabinet make their way in, led by Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Let's bring in our panel for the evening. With us in the studio to help with context and analysis tonight, we've got Amy Walter of the Cook Political Report with Amy Walter, David Brooks, columnist for the New York Times, Jonathan Capehart, associate editor for the Washington Post, and Tiffany Smiley, who is a Republican candidate for Congress in Washington State. Tiffany, we'll start with you because you worked with President Trump during the first term on VA reform. So give us a sense of how he can set a framework for what has really just been a breakneck pace these first 6 weeks as he and Elon Musk and their allies set to really reorient the federal government.
That's right, and it's absolutely needed because he was handed an economy that wasn't working for the American people. We were on the verge of World War III, so it's been amazing to watch him work so fast and so hard for the American people, and really he's delivering on the promises that he campaigned on in sharing, from securing our border to getting our economy back on track. He's really delivering on those promises, and, look, media is having a hard time keeping up with him. And, the American people might think, maybe they don't like some of the ways that he is delivering on this, but there's no easy way to accomplish these monumental tasks. It has to be done. And President Trump does a really good job of painting a vision of a better future. And that's what I think he will focus on in his speech, is really showing the American people that there is hope and we will renew America and we will get it back.
Seeing live picture there as members of his cabinet continue to make their way into the chambers. EPA Chief Lee Zeldin, Department of Homeland Security Secretary Kristi Noem as well. Amy Walter, as we watch everyone file in and take their seats in anticipation of the president's remarks now, we mentioned he's speaking to a deeply divided country.
Yes.
We do have some latest poll numbers that speak to how people feel about what they have been seeing so far from President Trump and his second administration. Tell us about the audience outside that chamber tonight.
Outside who's watching. You know, he has a very good story to tell, especially for people who voted for Donald Trump. They've definitely got a return on the investment very quickly. He has followed up on many of the promises that he made on the campaign trail. For those, though, that either didn't vote for him or voted for him but weren't necessarily as excited about some of these things that he's doing today, whether it's DOGE or maybe some of the things on the border, what they were really expecting was to see more done on the economy, that the price of stuff was going to go down. So I think for the audience outside of this, what he's really going to need to do is to explain how indeed he is going to bring inflation down, how tariffs are going to help regular consumers with the cost of stuff, and that there's a plan going forward. The other thing I think that's really fascinating, we have a divided country, we have a divided Congress. I don't know the last time that a first-term president came into a Congress who he is really not, he doesn't need to use them as much. Normally, presidents come into the Congress, they say, here's what I want to do in my first term.
Right.
He can come in there and say, I've already done pretty much everything I've wanted to do. I'd love it if you guys helped me with a couple other things. He's got the tax bill and more money for immigration reform. But he is coming in basically saying the executive authority here has been really the thing that I will continue to use. And I don't know that I need you guys that much.
And the driving force of a lot of the action we've seen so far, right?
Yeah, he's addressing a Congress that he's largely sidelined.
He's either sidelined or they have not put up any opposition to him.
Yeah. David Brooks, it strikes me that President Trump is addressing the nation tonight having jettisoned some 80 years worth of American foreign policy. He is really setting the U.S. on a realignment of the post-World War II alliance. Is there anything that he could say tonight? You know, Amy was talking about how she expects him to explain to the American public what he's doing. Is there anything he could say on that front that would allay some of your concerns?
Yeah, I'm expecting an apology to Vladimir Zelensky. We've been a country that has been internationalist since World War II, and it's always been about breaking down barriers and lowering walls, lowering trade barriers. And this is a president who ran an office in 2016 on bragging about a wall. And in the second term, he's built walls around us versus our allies, versus Canada, versus China, or versus Mexico. And so there's a lot of walls going up. What I'm looking for in this speech is, why is he doing tariffs? Like, there are a lot of possible reasons he could be doing tariffs. He wants to get the Canada crack down on some immigration or drug importation, or maybe he thinks the Canadian auto industry should all move to Michigan. Like, there are a lot of different reasons, and they have radically different implications of why he's doing the policy. And so he's done a lot of policies that are a little of this, a little of that. I would just love to know what the thinking is behind it. Like, what's the strategy here? Because it really makes a difference to how businesses will have to operate, consumer confidence, economic instability. If there is a plan here, it may be a good plan, it may be a bad plan, but I'd love to know there's a plan.
Jonathan, speaking of strategy, for Democrats in the room, and we know a few lawmakers have said that they are boycotting, they're not attending tonight. We spoke earlier with Pramila Jayapal, and she mentioned that Democrats will be dignified. They will be silently protesting in their seats as they listen to the president speak tonight, those who've chosen to be there in the chamber. You have tens of millions of people potentially watching this tonight, people who are looking to see how this party will be in opposition to the president in some unified way. Is this the right response for them in this moment on this night?
Yes, because this won't be the only opportunity for them to respond. This is the biggest stage that the president will have to address the nation since being inaugurated. He has done a lot of things that have angered and upset not just the Democrats in the chamber, but people around the country. And I think there are a lot of people within the Democratic Party who are looking to members to reflect the anger and the frustration. And I think we'll see a range of reactions, from sitting silently. I wouldn't be surprised, and it's been reported that some members of Congress have said that they will walk out if he says specific lines that they do not like. I think that is more than appropriate, infinitely more appropriate than yelling "you lie" to the President of the United States, as happened to President Obama during his first term. There is a lot of frustration with. Look, I'll give the president his props. He has done a lot in the 6 to 7 weeks he has been in office. That doesn't necessarily mean that they were the right things to do. And we're looking every day, thousands of people, not just in Washington, but across the country, who are losing their jobs. These are not faceless bureaucrats. These are people from safeguarding the nuclear stockpile to letting us know whether there are hurricanes and storms coming. These are people who are dedicated public servants who love the jobs that they do, and they're being wiped away. So I don't know if the president's going to address those concerns. I do expect a lot of crowing and a lot of chest beating, which is his right. But I also expect this to be a festival of meanness, because that is what I have grown accustomed to when hearing Donald Trump speak.
Tiffany, in our latest PBS News NPR Marist poll, 56% of Americans said that since taking office, Donald Trump has rushed to make changes without considering their impact. Could he do more to help bring the American people along in this process, to explain to folks, why they are dismantling certain government agencies, why they have fired the government workers they've chosen to fire, so on and so forth?
Yeah, and look, I think he will start to lay that out tonight for the American people. But we have to remember, when he was in office in 2017, starting his term, he learned a lot. And then he had 4 years to think about how to solve these problems. And I know that he realized you sort of have to rip the Band-Aid off. There's no easy way to do it. Everyone, even Democrats, talk about reducing the government and reducing spending, but no one's actually willing to do it until Trump came along. And I think this has been the most successful first 43 days of any American president. He is moving fast, he's moving furious, and that's what it takes. Change is good. Government hates change. They don't like it, and so Trump's delivering on every level.
Let's listen in now, live on the House chamber floor. You see there, President Trump has entered the chamber. He's making his way down the aisle, followed by members of the Republican leadership and other lawmakers. We'll go live to his remarks, of course, as he begins. But as he makes his way down the aisle, our own Lisa Desjardins has a key vantage point in the chamber. Lisa, tell us about what you see up in the room right now, and also weigh in on some of the conversation we've been having here about some sentiment among Americans that perhaps the administration's moving too fast, approval ratings dipping slightly for the president. Is that something Republicans you speak with are cognizant of and feel that could make them vulnerable?
This is a very hot and cold moment for some Republicans I talk to. This is a moment of victory, celebration, electricity for them. But for some of them, especially in districts where there are a great deal of federal workers or districts where there are farmers worried about tariffs, there is a slight note of caution. No one seems too worried yet. But talking to senators and House members about this speech, they want to make sure that Trump can appeal to the widest group of Americans possible tonight, especially in those swing districts. They are worried that perhaps some of their constituents may think he's going too far. That idea of a festival of meanness, as Jonathan said, they're worried that Americans might perceive something like that, even in this great moment of celebration and victory for them. I'll tell you, as I look at the president entering the chamber, I want to say that those along the aisle have been there for more than 5 hours trying to get, oh, I'm sorry, it's the senators entering the chamber, trying to get that key position to be in place as the cameras show them and the president. Marjorie Taylor Greene, a key Trump ally, is wearing a MAGA red hat. I believe it says Trump was right about everything. So, and then you see Democrats to the side, their hands folded, almost as if there's not an event going on at all. Next to them, Republicans openly celebrating.
And Lisa, we should say, as the president was making his way in, we saw a member of Congress, Melanie Stansbury, the congresswoman from New Mexico, holding a sign that said, "This is not normal." Amy Walter, how do Democrats navigate this current moment where they feel the need to push back against Donald Trump but don't want to be seen defending the status quo?
That's right.
After an election where the
status quo was rejected.
Resoundly.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Not only the status quo, but the fact that Democrats are now seen as really the party of the establishment and more of the elite class, which is not a benefit in this day and age. And in fact, I saw some polling recently. A Democratic firm came out with polling that found independent voters now believe that Democrats as a party more closely represent CEOs and business than represent middle class and working class voters. So there is an identity crisis going on with Democrats. But when you're in the minority party, especially the minority party in the House, there really is nothing you can do. You can object, but there is not much more you can do to make your policies and your frustrations evident.
Let's listen in live now as President Trump addresses a joint session of Congress.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. It's a great honor. Thank you very much. Speaker Johnson, Vice President Vance, the First Lady of the United States. Members of the United States Congress, thank you very much. And to my fellow citizens, America is back. 6 weeks ago, I stood beneath the dome of this Capitol and proclaimed the dawn of the golden age of America. From that moment on, it has been nothing but swift and unrelenting action to usher in the greatest and most successful era in the history of our country. We have accomplished more in 43 days than most administrations accomplished in 4 years or 8 years, and we are just getting started. I return to this chamber tonight to report that America's momentum is back, our spirit is back, our pride is back, our confidence is back, and the American dream is surging bigger and better than ever before. The American dream is unstoppable, and our country is on the verge of a comeback, the likes of which the world has never witnessed and perhaps will never witness again. There's never been anything like it. The presidential election of November 5th was a mandate like has not been seen in many decades. We won all 7 swing states, giving us an electoral college victory of 312 votes. We won the popular vote by big numbers and won counties in our country. And won counties in our country, 2,700 to 525, on a map that reads almost completely red for Republican. Now, for the first time in modern history, more Americans believe that our country is headed in the right direction than the wrong direction. In fact, it's an astonishing record, 27-point swing, the most ever. Likewise, small business optimism saw its single largest one-month gain ever recorded, a 41-point jump.
Members are directed to uphold and maintain decorum in the House and to cease any further disruptions. That's your warning. Members are engaging in willful and continuing breach of decorum, and the chair is prepared to direct the Sergeant-at-Arms to restore order to the joint session. Mr. Green, take your seat. Take your seat, sir. Take your seat. Finding that members continue to engage in willful and concerted disruption of proper decorum, the chair now directs the Sergeant-at-Arms to restore order. Remove this gentleman from the chamber. Members are directed to uphold and maintain decorum in the House. Mr. President, you continue.
Thank you. Over the past 6 weeks, I have signed nearly 100 executive orders and taken more than 400 executive actions, a record, to restore common sense, safety, optimism, and wealth all across our wonderful land. The people elected me to do the job, and I'm doing it. In fact, it has been stated by many that the first month of our presidency, it's our presidency, is the most successful in the history of our nation. By many. And what makes it even more impressive is that, do you know who number 2 is? George Washington. How about that? How about that? I don't know about that list, but we'll take it. Within hours of taking the oath of office, I declared a national emergency on our southern border, and I deployed the U.S. military and Border Patrol to repel the invasion of our country. And what a job they've done. As a result, illegal border crossings last month were by far the lowest ever recorded, ever. They heard my words and they chose not to come. Much easier that way. In comparison, under Joe Biden, the worst president in American history, there were hundreds of thousands of illegal crossings a month, and virtually all of them, including murderers, drug dealers, gang members, and people from mental institutions and insane asylums, were released into our country. Who would want to do that? This is my 5th such speech to Congress. And once again, I look at the Democrats in front of me, and I realize there is absolutely nothing I can say to make them happy or to make them stand or smile or applaud. Nothing I can do. I could find a cure to the most devastating disease, a disease that would wipe out entire nations, or announce the answers to the greatest economy in history, or the stoppage of crime to the lowest levels ever recorded. And these people sitting right here will not clap, will not stand, and certainly will not cheer for these astronomical achievements. They won't do it, no matter what. Five times I've been up here. It's very sad, and it just shouldn't be this way. So Democrats sitting before me, for just this one night, why not join us in celebrating so many incredible wins for America? For the good of our nation, let's work together and let's truly make America great again. Every day, my administration is fighting to deliver the change America needs to bring a future that America deserves, and we're doing it. This is a time for big dreams and bold action. Upon taking office, I imposed an immediate freeze on all federal hiring, a freeze on all new federal regulations, and a freeze on all foreign aid. I terminated the ridiculous Green New Scam. I withdrew from the unfair Paris Climate Accord, which was costing us trillions of dollars. that other countries were not paying. I withdrew from the corrupt World Health Organization. And I also withdrew from the anti-American UN Human Rights Council. We ended all of Biden's environmental restrictions that were making our country far less safe and totally unaffordable. And importantly, we ended the last administration's insane electric vehicle mandate, saving our auto workers and companies from economic destruction. To unshackle our economy, I have directed that for every one new regulation, 10 old regulations must be eliminated, just like I did in my very successful first term. And in that first term, we set records on ending unnecessary rules and regulations like no other president had done before. We ordered all federal workers to return to the office. They will either show up for work in person or be removed from their job. And we have ended weaponized government where, as an example, a sitting president is allowed to viciously prosecute his political opponent, like me. How did that work out? Not too good. Not too good. And I have stopped all government censorship and brought back free speech in America. It's back. And 2 days ago, I signed an order making English the official language of the United States of America. I renamed the Gulf of Mexico the Gulf of America. And likewise, I renamed, for a great president, William McKinley, Mount McKinley again. Beautiful Alaska. We love Alaska. We've ended the tyranny of so-called diversity, equity, and inclusion policies all across the entire federal government and indeed the private sector and our military. And our country will be woke no longer. We believe that whether you are a doctor, an accountant, a lawyer, or an air traffic controller, you should be hired and promoted based on skill and competence, not race or gender. Very important. You should be hired based on merit. And the Supreme Court, in a brave and very powerful decision, has allowed us to do so. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. We have removed the poison of critical race theory from our public schools, and I signed an order making it the official policy of the United States government that there are only two genders, male and female. I also signed an executive order to ban men from playing in women's sports. Three years ago, Peyton McNabb was an all-star high school athlete, one of the best, preparing for a future in college sports. But when her girls' volleyball match was invaded by a male, he smashed the ball so hard in Peyton's face, causing traumatic brain injury, partially paralyzing her right side and ending her athletic career. It was a shot like she's never seen before. She's never seen anything like it. Peyton is here tonight in the gallery, and Peyton, from now on, schools will kick the men off the girls' team, or they will lose all federal funding. And if you really want to see numbers, just take a look at what happened in the women's boxing, weightlifting, track and field, swimming, or cycling, where a male recently finished a long-distance race 5 hours and 14 minutes ahead of a woman for a new record by 5 hours. Broke the record by 5 hours. It's demeaning for women, and it's very bad for our country. We're not going to put up with it any longer. What I have just described is only a small fraction of the common sense revolution that is now, because of us, sweeping the entire world. Common sense has become a common theme, and we will never go back. Never. Never going to let that happen. Among my very highest priorities is to rescue our economy and get dramatic and immediate relief to working families. As you know, we inherited from the last administration an economic catastrophe and an inflation nightmare. Their policies drove up energy prices, pushed up grocery costs, and drove the necessities of life out of reach for millions and millions of Americans. They've never had anything like it. We suffered the worst inflation in 48 years, but perhaps even in the history of our country. They're not sure. As president, I'm fighting every day to reverse this damage and make America affordable again. Joe Biden especially let the price of eggs get out of control. The egg price is out of control, and we're working hard to get it back down. Secretary, do a good job on that. You inherited a total mess from the previous administration. Do a good job. A major focus of our fight to defeat inflation is rapidly reducing the cost of energy. The previous administration cut the number of new oil and gas leases by 95%, slowed pipeline construction to a halt, and closed more than 100 power plants. We are opening up many of those power plants right now. And frankly, we have never seen anything like it. That's why on my first day in office, I declared a national energy emergency. As you've heard me say many times, we have more liquid gold under our feet than any nation on earth, and by far. And now I fully authorize the most talented team ever assembled to go and get it. It's called Drill, Baby, Drill. My administration is also working on a gigantic natural gas pipeline in Alaska, among the largest in the world, where Japan, South Korea, and other nations want to be our partner with investments of trillions of dollars each. There's never been anything like that one. It will be truly spectacular. It's all set to go. The permitting is gotten. And later this week, I will also take historic action to dramatically expand production of critical minerals and rare earths here in the USA. To further combat inflation, we will not only be reducing the cost of energy, but will be ending the flagrant waste of taxpayer dollars. And to that end, I have created the brand new Department of Government Efficiency. GOES. Perhaps you've heard of it. Perhaps. Which is headed by Elon Musk, who is in the gallery tonight. Thank you, Elon. He's working very hard. He didn't need this. He didn't need this. Thank you very much. We appreciate it. Everybody here, even this side, appreciates it, I believe. They just don't want to admit that. Just listen to some of the appalling waste we have already identified. $22 billion from HHS to provide free housing and cars for illegal aliens. $45 million for diversity, equity, and inclusion scholarships in Burma. $40 million to improve the social and economic inclusion of sedentary migrants. Nobody knows what that is. $8 million to promote LGBTQI+ in the African nation of Lesotho, which nobody has ever heard of. $60 million for indigenous peoples and Afro-Colombian empowerment in Central America. $60 million. $8 million for making mice transgender. This is real. $32 million for a left-wing propaganda operation in Moldova. $10 million for male circumcision in Mozambique. $20 million for the Arab Sesame Street in the Middle East. It's a program. $20 million for a program. $1.9 billion to recently created Decarbonization of Homes Committee, headed up, and we know she's involved. Just at the last moment, the money was passed over by a woman named Stacey Abrams. Have you ever heard of her? A $3.5 million consulting contract for lavish fish monitoring. $1.5 million for voter confidence in Liberia. $14 million for social cohesion in Mali. $59 million for illegal alien hotel rooms in New York City. He's a real estate developer. He's done very well. $250,000 to increase vegan local climate action innovation in Zambia. $42 million for social and behavior change in Uganda. $14 million for improving public procurement in Serbia. $47 million for improving learning outcomes in Asia. Asia's doing very well with learning. We know what we're doing. We should use it ourselves. And $101 million for DEI contracts at the Department of Education, the most ever paid, nothing even like it. Under the Trump administration, all of these scams, and they're far worse, but I didn't think it was appropriate to talk about them. They're so bad. Many more have been found out and exposed and swiftly terminated by a group of very intelligent, mostly young people, headed up by Elon, and we appreciate it. We found hundreds of billions of dollars of fraud. And we've taken back the money and reduced our debt to fight inflation and other things. Taken back a lot of that money. We got it just in time. This is just the beginning. The Government Accountability Office, a federal government office, has estimated annual fraud of over $500 billion in our nation, and we are working very hard to stop it. We're going to. We're also identifying shocking levels of incompetence and probable fraud in the Social Security program for our seniors, and that our seniors and people that we love rely on. Believe it or not, government databases list 4.7 million Social Security members from people aged 100 to 109 years old. It lists 3.6 million people from ages 110 to 119. I don't know any of them. I know some people that are rather elderly, but not quite that elderly. 3.47 million people from ages 120 to 129. 3.9 million people from ages 130 to 139. 3.5 million people from ages 140 to 149. And money is being paid to many of them, and we're searching right now. In fact, Pam, good luck. Good luck. You're going to find it. But a lot of people, because it just keeps getting paid, and nobody does, and it really hurts Social Security and hurts our country. 1.3 million people from ages 150 to 159, and over 130,000 people, according to the Social Security databases, are age over 160 years old. We have a healthier country than I thought, Bobby. Including, to finish, 1,039 people between the ages of 220 and 229, one person between the age of 240 and 249, and one person is listed at 360 years of age. More than 100 years older than our country. But we're going to find out where that money's going, and it's not going to be pretty. By slashing all of the fraud, waste, and theft we can find, we will defeat inflation, bring down mortgage rates, lower car payments and grocery prices, protect our seniors, and put more money in the pockets of American families. And today, interest rates took a beautiful drop, big, beautiful drop. It's about time. And in the near future, I want to do what has not been done in 24 years, balance the federal budget. We're going to balance it. With that goal in mind, we have developed in great detail what we are calling the Gold Card, which goes on sale very, very soon. For $5 million, we will allow the most successful job-creating people from all over the world to buy a path to U.S. citizenship. It's like the green card, but better and more sophisticated. And these people will have to pay tax in our country. They won't have to pay tax from where they came. The money that they've made, you wouldn't want to do that, but they have to pay tax, create jobs. They'll also be taking people out of colleges and paying for them so that we can keep them in our country instead of having them being forced out. Number one, at the top school, as an example, being forced out and not being allowed to stay and create tremendous numbers of jobs and great success for a company out there. So while we take out the criminals, killers, traffickers, and child predators who are allowed to enter our country under the open border policy of these people, the Democrats, the Biden administration, the open border insane policies that you've allowed to destroy our country, we will now bring in brilliant, hardworking, job-creating people. They're going to pay a lot of money, and we're going to reduce our debt with that money. Americans have given us a mandate for bold and profound change. For nearly 100 years, the federal bureaucracy has grown until it has crushed our freedoms, ballooned our deficits, and held back America's potential in every possible way. The nation founded by pioneers and risk-takers now drowns under millions and millions of pages of regulations and debt. Approvals that should take 10 days to get instead take 10 years, 15 years, and even 20 years before you're rejected. Meanwhile, we have hundreds of thousands of federal workers who have not been showing up to work. My administration will reclaim power from this unaccountable bureaucracy, and we will restore true democracy to America again. Any federal bureaucrat who resists this change will be removed from office immediately. Because we are draining the swamp. It's very simple. And the days of rule by unelected bureaucrats are over. And the next phase of our plan to deliver the greatest economy in history is for this Congress to pass tax cuts for everybody. They're in there. They're waiting for you to vote. And I'm sure that the people on my right, I don't mean the Republican right, but my right here, I'm sure you're going to vote for those tax cuts, because otherwise I don't believe the people will ever vote you into office. So I'm doing you a big favor by telling you that. But I know this group is going to be voting for the tax. Thank you. It's a very, very big part of our plan. We had tremendous success in our first term with it. A very big part of our plan. We're seeking permanent income tax cuts all across the board. And to get urgently needed relief to Americans hit especially hard by inflation, I'm calling for no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, and no tax on Social Security benefits for our great seniors. And I also want to make interest payments on car loans tax deductible, but only if the car is made in America. And by the way, we're going to have growth in the auto industry like nobody's ever seen. Plants are opening up all over the place. Deals are being made. Never seen. That's a combination of the election win and tariffs. It's a beautiful word, isn't it? That, along with our other policies, will allow our auto industry to absolutely boom. It's going to boom. Spoke to the majors today, all three, the top people, and they're so excited. In fact, already numerous car companies have announced that they will be building massive automobile plants in America, with Honda just announcing a new plant in Indiana, one of the largest anywhere in the world. And this has taken place since our great victory on November 5th, a date which will hopefully go down as one of the most important in the history of our country. In addition, as part of our tax cuts, we want to cut taxes on domestic production and all manufacturing. And just as we did before, we will provide 100% expensing. It will be retroactive to January 20th, 2025, and it was one of the main reasons why our tax cuts were so successful in our first term, giving us the most successful economy in the history of our country. First term. We had a great first term. If you don't make your product in America, however, under the Trump administration, you will pay a tariff, and in some cases, a rather large one. Other countries have used tariffs against us for decades, and now it's our turn to start using them against those other countries. On average, the European Union, China, Brazil, India, Mexico, and Canada, have you heard of them? And countless other nations charge us tremendously higher tariffs than we charge them. It's very unfair. India charges us auto tariffs higher than 100%. China's average tariff on our products is twice what we charge them. And South Korea's average tariff is 4 times higher. Think of that, 4 times higher. And we give so much help militarily and in so many other ways to South Korea, but that's what happens. This is happening by friend and foe. This system is not fair to the United States and never was, and so on April 2nd, I wanted to make it April 1st, but I didn't want to be accused of April Fool's Day. That's not, just one day was cost us a lot of money. But we're going to do it in April. I'm a very superstitious person. April 2nd, reciprocal tariffs kick in. And whatever they tariff us, other countries, we will tariff them. That's reciprocal, back and forth. Whatever they tax us, we will tax them. If they do non-monetary tariffs to keep us out of their market, then we will do non-monetary barriers to keep them out of our market. There's a lot of that, too. They don't even allow us in their market. We will take in trillions and trillions of dollars and create jobs like we have never seen before. I did it with China, and I did it with others, and the Biden administration couldn't do anything about it because there was so much money they couldn't do anything about it. We have been ripped off for decades by nearly every country on earth, and we will not let that happen any longer. Much has been said over the last 3 months about Mexico and Canada, but we have very large deficits with both of them. But even more importantly, they've allowed fentanyl to come into our country at levels never seen before, killing hundreds of thousands of our citizens and many very young, beautiful people, destroying families. Nobody's ever seen anything like it. They are, in effect, receiving subsidies of hundreds of billions of dollars. We pay subsidies to Canada and to Mexico of hundreds of billions of dollars, and the United States will not be doing that any longer. We're not going to do it any longer. Thanks to our America First policies we're putting into place, we have had $1.7 trillion of new investment in America in just the past few weeks. The combination of the election and our economic policies that people of SoftBank, one of the most brilliant anywhere in the world, announced a $200 billion investment. And Oracle, Larry Ellison, announced $500 billion investment, which they wouldn't have done if Kamala had won. Apple announced $500 billion investment. Tim Cook called me. He said, I cannot spend it fast enough. It's going to be much higher than that, I believe. They'll be building their plants here instead of in China. And just yesterday, Taiwan Semiconductor, the biggest in the world, most powerful in the world, has a tremendous amount, 97% of the market, announced a $165 billion investment to build the most powerful chips on earth right here in the USA. And we're not giving them. It is a horrible, horrible thing. We give hundreds of billions of dollars, and it doesn't mean a thing. They take our money and they don't spend it. All that meant to them, we're giving them no money. All that was important to them was they didn't want to pay the tariffs, so they came and they're building, and many other companies are coming. We don't have to give them money. We just want to protect our businesses and our people. And they will come because they won't have to pay tariffs if they build in America. So it's very amazing. You should get rid of the CHIP Act, and whatever's left over, Mr. Speaker, you should use it to reduce debt or any other reason you want to. Our new trade policy will also be great for the American farmer. I love the farmer. Who will now be selling into our home market, the USA, because nobody is going to be able to compete with you. Because there's goods that come in from other countries and companies, they're really in a bad position in so many different ways. They're uninspected. They may be very dirty and disgusting, and they come in and they pour in, and they hurt our American farmers. The tariffs will go on agricultural product coming into America, and our farmers, starting on April 2nd, it may be a little bit of an adjustment period. We had that before when I made the deal with China, $50 billion of purchases, and I said, just bear with me, and they did. They did. Probably have to bear with me again, and this will be even better. That was great. The problem with it was that Biden didn't enforce it. He didn't enforce it. $50 billion of purchases, and we were doing great, but Biden did not enforce it, and it hurt our farmers. But our farmers are going to have a field day right now. So to our farmers, have a lot of fun. I love you too. I love you too. It's all going to happen. And I have also imposed a 25% tariff on foreign aluminum, copper, lumber, and steel, because if we don't have, as an example, steel and lots of other things, we don't have a military, and frankly, we just won't have a country very long. Here today is a proud American steelworker, fantastic person from Decatur, Alabama, Jeff Denard. Has been working at the same steel plant for 27 years in a job that has allowed him to serve as the captain of his local volunteer fire department, raised 7 children with his beautiful wife, Nicole, and over the years provide a loving home for more than 40 foster children. So great, Jeff. Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Jeff. Stories like Jeff's remind us that tariffs are not just about protecting American jobs. They're about protecting the soul of our country. Tariffs are about making America rich again and making America great again, and it's happening, and it will happen rather quickly. There'll be a little disturbance, but we're okay with that. It won't be much. No, you're not. Oh. And look where Biden took us, very low, the lowest we've ever been. Jeff, I want to thank you very much. And I also want to recognize another person who has devoted herself to foster care community. She works so hard on it. A very loving person, our magnificent First Lady of the United States. Melania's work has yielded incredible results, helping prepare our nation's future leaders as they enter the workforce. Our First Lady is joined by two impressive young women, very impressive. Haley Ferguson, who benefited from the First Lady's Fostering the Future initiative and is poised to complete her education and become a teacher. And Elliston Berry, who became a victim of an illicit deepfake image produced by a peer. With Elliston's help, the Senate just passed the Take It Down Act, and this is so important. Thank you very much, John. John Thune, thank you. Stand up, John. Thank you, John. Thank you all very much. Thank you. And thank you to John Thune and the Senate. Great job. To criminalize the publication of such images online is a terrible, terrible thing. And once it passes the House, I look forward to signing that bill into law. Thank you. And I'm going to use that bill for myself, too, if you don't mind. Because nobody gets treated worse than I do online. Nobody. That's great. Thank you very much to the Senate. Thank you. But if we truly care about protecting Americans' children, no step is more crucial than securing America's borders. Over the past 4 years, 21 million people poured into the United States. Many of them were murderers, human traffickers, gang members, and other criminals from the streets of dangerous cities all throughout the world. Because of Joe Biden's insane and very dangerous open border policies, they are now strongly embedded in our country, but we are getting them out and getting them out fast. And I want to thank Tom Homan and Christy. I want to thank you and Paul of Border Patrol. I want to thank you. What a job they've all done. Everybody, Border Patrol, ICE, law enforcement in general is incredible. We have to take care of our law enforcement. Have to. Last year, a brilliant 22-year-old nursing student named Laken Riley, the best in her class, admired by everybody, went out for a jog on the campus of the University of Georgia. That morning, Laken was viciously attacked, assaulted, beaten, brutalized, and horrifically murdered. Laken was stolen from us by a savage illegal alien gang member who was arrested while trespassing across Biden's open southern border and then set loose into the United States under the heartless policies of that failed administration. It was indeed a failed administration. He had then been arrested and released in a Democrat-run sanctuary city, a disaster, before ending the life of this beautiful young angel. With us this evening are Laken's beloved mother, Allison, and her sister, Lauren. Last year, I told Laken's grieving parents that we would ensure their daughter would not have died in vain. That's why the very first bill I signed into law as your 47th president mandates the detention of all dangerous criminal aliens who threaten public safety. It's a very strong, powerful act. It's called the Laken-Riley Act. So Allison and Lauren, America will never, ever forget our beautiful Laken Hope Riley. Thank you very much. Since taking office, my administration has launched the most sweeping border and immigration crackdown in American history, and we quickly achieved the lowest numbers of illegal border crossers ever recorded. Thank you. The media and our friends in the Democrat Party kept saying we needed new legislation, we must have legislation to secure the border. But it turned out that all we really needed was a new president. Thank you. Joe Biden didn't just open our borders, he flew illegal aliens over them to overwhelm our schools, hospitals, and communities throughout the country. Entire towns like Aurora, Colorado, and Springfield, Ohio, buckled under the weight of the migrant occupation and corruption like nobody's ever seen before. Beautiful towns destroyed. Now, just as I promised in my inaugural address, we are achieving the great liberation of America. But there still is much work to be done. Here tonight is a woman I have gotten to know, Alexis Nungari from Houston. Wonderful woman. Last June, Alexis's 12-year-old daughter, her precious Jocelyn, walked to a nearby convenience store. She was kidnapped, tied up, assaulted for 2 hours under a bridge, and horrifically murdered. Arrested and charged with this heinous crime are 2 illegal alien monsters from Venezuela, released into America by the last administration through their ridiculous open border. The death of this beautiful 12-year-old girl and the agony of her mother and family touched our entire nation greatly. Alexis, I promised that we would always remember your daughter, your magnificent daughter, and earlier tonight I signed an order keeping my word to you. One thing I have learned about Jocelyn is that she loved animals so much. She loved nature. Across Galveston Bay, from where Jocelyn lived in Houston, you will find a magnificent national wildlife refuge, a pristine, peaceful, 34,000-acre sanctuary for all of God's creatures on the edge of the Gulf of America. Alexis, moments ago, I formally renamed that refuge in loving memory of your beautiful daughter, Jocelyn. So, Mr. Vice President, if you would, may I have the order? Thank you very much. All three savages charged with Jocelyn and Lakin's murders were members of the Venezuelan prison gang, the toughest gang, they say, in the world, known as Tren de Aragua. 2 weeks ago, I officially designated this gang, along with MS-13 and the bloodthirsty Mexican drug cartels, as foreign terrorist organizations. They are now officially in the same category as ISIS, and that's not good for them. Countless thousands of these terrorists were welcomed into the U.S. by the Biden administration. But now every last one will be rounded up and forcibly removed from our country, or, if they're too dangerous, put in jails, standing trial in this country, because we don't want them to come back ever. With us this evening is a warrior on the front lines of that battle, Border Patrol Agent Roberto Ortiz. Great guy. In January, Roberto and another agent were patrolling the Rio Grande near an area known as Cartel Island. Doesn't sound too nice to me. When heavily armed gunmen started shooting at them, Roberto saw that his partner was totally exposed, at great danger, and he leapt into action, returning fire and providing crucial seconds for his fellow agent to seek safety, just barely. I have some of the prints of that event, and it was not good. Agent Ortiz, we salute you for your great courage and for your line of fire that you took and for the bravery that you showed. We honor you, and we will always honor you. Thank you, Roberto, very much. Thank you, Roberto. And I actually got to know him on my many calls to the border. He's a great gentleman. The territory to the immediate south of our border is now dominated entirely by criminal cartels that murder, rape, torture, and exercise total control. They have total control over a whole nation, posing a grave threat to our national security. The cartels are waging war on America, and it's time for America to wage war on the cartels, which we are. Five nights ago, Mexican authorities, because of our tariff policies being imposed on them, think of this, handed over to us 29 of the biggest cartel leaders in their country. That has never happened before. They want to make us happy. First time ever. But we need Mexico and Canada to do much more than they've done, and they have to stop the fentanyl and drugs pouring into the USA. They're going to stop it. I have sent Congress a detailed funding request laying out exactly how we will eliminate these threats to protect our homeland and complete the largest deportation operation in American history, larger even than current record holder, President Dwight D. Eisenhower, a moderate man, but someone who believed very strongly in borders. Americans expect Congress to send me this funding without delay so I can sign it into law. So, Mr. Speaker, John Thune, both of you, I hope you're going to be able to do that, Mr. Speaker. Thank you. Mr. Leader, thank you. Thank you very much. And let's get it to me. I'll sign it so fast, you won't even believe it. And as we reclaim our sovereignty, we must also bring back law and order to our cities and towns. In recent years, our justice system has been turned upside down by radical left lunatics. Many jurisdictions virtually ceased enforcing the law against dangerous repeat offenders while weaponizing law enforcement against political opponents like me. My administration has acted swiftly and decisively to restore fair, equal, and impartial justice under the constitutional rule of law, starting at the FBI and the DOJ. Pam, good luck. Cash, wherever you may be, good luck. Good luck. Pam Bondi, good luck. So important. Going to do a great job. Cash, thank you. Thank you, Cash. They've already started very strong. They're going to do a fantastic job. You're going to be very proud of them. We're also once again giving our police officers the support they so dearly deserve. They have to get it. They have such a hard, dangerous job, but we're going to make it less dangerous. The problem is the bad guys don't respect the law, but they're starting to respect it, and they soon will respect it. This also includes our great fire departments throughout the country. Our firemen and women are unbelievable people, and I will never forget them. And besides that, they voted for me in record numbers, so I have no choice. A year ago this month, 31-year-old New York police officer Jonathan Diller, unbelievably wonderful person and a great officer, was gunned down at a traffic stop on Long Island. I went to his funeral. His criminal charged with his murder had 21 prior arrests, and they were rough arrests, too. He was a real bad one. The thug in the seat next to him had 14 prior arrests and went by the name of Killer. He was Killer. He killed other people, they say, a lot of them. I attended Officer Diller's service, and when I met his wife and one-year-old son, Ryan, it was very inspirational, actually. His widow's name is Stephanie, and she is here tonight. Stephanie, thank you very much, Stephanie. Thank you very much. Stephanie, we're going to make sure that Ryan knows his dad was a true hero, New York's finest, and we're going to get these cold-blooded killers and repeat offenders off our streets, and we're going to do it fast. Got to stop it. They get out with 28 arrests. They push people into subway trains. They hit people over the head, back of the head with baseball bats. We got to get them out of here. I've already signed an executive order requiring a mandatory death penalty for anyone who murders a police officer, and tonight I'm asking Congress to pass that policy into permanent law. I'm also asking for a new crime bill getting tough on repeat offenders while enhancing protections for America's police officers so they can do their jobs without fear of their lives being totally destroyed. They don't want to be killed. We're not going to let them be killed. Joining us in the gallery tonight is a young man who truly loves our police. His name is DJ Daniel. He is 13 years old, and he has always dreamed of becoming a police officer. But in 2018, DJ was diagnosed with brain cancer. The doctors gave him 5 months at most to live. That was more than 6 years ago. Since that time, DJ and his dad have been on a quest to make his dream come true, and DJ has been sworn in as an honorary law enforcement officer, actually a number of times. The police love him, the police departments love him. And tonight, DJ, we're going to do you the biggest honor of them all. I am asking our new Secret Service Director, Sean Curran, to officially make you an agent of the United States Secret Service. Thank you, DJ. DJ's doctors believe his cancer likely came from a chemical he was exposed to when he was younger. Since 1975, rates of child cancer have increased by more than 40%. Reversing this trend is one of the top priorities for our new presidential commission to make America healthy again, chaired by our new Secretary of Health and Human Services, Robert F. Kennedy, Jr. With the name Kennedy, you would have thought everybody over here would have been cheering. How quickly they forget. To get toxins out of our environment, poisons out of our food supply, and keep our children healthy and strong. As an example, not long ago, and you can't even believe these numbers, 1 in 10,000 children had autism, 1 in 10,000. And now it's 1 in 36. There's something wrong. 1 in 36. Think of that. So we're going to find out what it is, and there's nobody better than Bobby and all of the people that are working with you. You have the best to figure out what is going on. Okay, Bobby? Good luck. It's a very important job. Thank you. Thank you. My administration is also working to protect our children from toxic ideologies in our schools. A few years ago, January Littlejohn and her husband discovered that their daughter's school had secretly socially transitioned their 13-year-old little girl. Teachers and administrators conspired to deceive January and her husband while encouraging her daughter to use a new name and pronouns. They, them pronoun, actually, all without telling Jan, who is here tonight and is now a courageous advocate against this form of child abuse. January, thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Stories like this are why, shortly after taking office, I signed an executive order banning public schools from indoctrinating our children with transgender ideology. I also signed an order to cut off all taxpayer funding to any institution that engages in the sexual mutilation of our youth. And now I want Congress to pass a bill permanently banning and criminalizing sex changes on children and forever ending the lie that any child is trapped in the wrong body. This is a big lie. And our message to every child in America is that you are perfect exactly the way God made you. Because we're getting wokeness out of our schools and out of our military, and it's already out, and it's out of our society. We don't want it. Wokeness is trouble. Wokeness is bad. It's gone. It's gone. And we feel so much better for it, don't we? Don't we feel better? Our service members won't be activists and ideologues. They will be fighters and warriors. They will fight for our country. And Pete, congratulations. Secretary of Defense, congratulations. And he's not big into the woke movement, I can tell you. I know him well. I am pleased to report that in January, the U.S. Army had its single best recruiting month in 15 years, and that all armed services are having among the best recruiting results ever in the history of our services. What a difference. And you know, it was just a few months ago where the results were exactly the opposite. We couldn't recruit anywhere. We couldn't recruit. Now we're having the best results just about that we've ever had. What a tremendous turnaround. It's really a beautiful thing to see. People love our country again. It's very simple. They love our country, and they love being in our military again. So it's a great thing, and thank you very much. Great job. Thank you. We're joined tonight by a young man, Jason Hartley, who knows the weight of that call of duty. Jason's father, grandfather, and great-grandfather all wore the uniform. Jason tragically lost his dad, who was also a Los Angeles County Sheriff's deputy when he was just a boy, and now he wants to carry on the family legacy of service. Jason is a senior in high school, a 6-letter varsity athlete, a really good athlete, they say, a brilliant student with a 4.46, that's good, GPA. And his greatest dream is to attend the U.S. Military Academy at West Point. And Jason, that's a very big deal getting in. That's a hard one to get into. But I'm pleased to inform you that your application has been accepted. You will soon be joining the Corps of Cadets. Thank you. Jason, you're going to be on the long gray line, Jason. As Commander-in-Chief, my focus is on building the most powerful military of the future. As a first step, I'm asking Congress to fund a state-of-the-art Golden Dome missile defense shield to protect our homeland, all made in the USA. And Ronald Reagan wanted to do it long ago, but the technology just wasn't there, not even close. But now we have the technology. It's incredible, actually. And other places, they have it. Israel has it. Other places have it. And the United States should have it too, right, Tim, right? They should have it too. So I want to thank you. But it's a very, very important. This is a very dangerous world. We should have it. We want to be protected, and we're going to protect our citizens like never before. To boost our defense industrial base, we are also going to resurrect the American shipbuilding industry, including commercial shipbuilding and military shipbuilding. And for that purpose, I am announcing tonight that we will create a new Office of Shipbuilding in the White House and offer special tax incentives to bring this industry home to America where it belongs. We used to make so many ships. We don't make them anymore very much, but we're going to make them very fast, very soon. It will have a huge impact. To further enhance our national security, my administration will be reclaiming the Panama Canal, and we've already started doing it. Just today, a large American company announced they are buying both ports around the Panama Canal and lots of other things having to do with the Panama Canal and a couple of other canals. The Panama Canal was built by Americans for Americans, not for others, but others could use it. But it was built at tremendous cost of American blood and treasure. 38,000 workers died building the Panama Canal. They died of malaria. They died of snake bites and mosquitoes. Not a nice place to work. They paid them very highly to go there, knowing there was a 25% chance that they would die. The most expensive project also that was ever built in our country's history, if you bring it up to modern day costs. It was given away by the Carter administration for $1. But that agreement has been violated very severely. We didn't give it to China. We gave it to Panama, and we're taking it back. And we have Marco Rubio in charge. Good luck, Marco. Now, we know who to blame if anything goes wrong. Marco's been amazing, and he's going to do a great job. Think of it. He got 100 votes. You know, he was approved with actually 99, but the 100th was this gentleman, and I feel very certain. So let's assume he got 100 votes. And I'm either very, very happy about that, or I'm very concerned about it. But he's already proven. I mean, he's a great gentleman. He's respected by everybody, and we appreciate you voting for Marco. He's going to do a fantastic job. Thank you. Thank you. He's doing a great job. Great job. And I also have a message tonight for the incredible people of Greenland. We strongly support your right to determine your own future. And if you choose, we welcome you into the United States of America. We need Greenland for national security and even international security, and we're working with everybody involved to try and get it. But we need it really for international world security, and I think we're going to get it. One way or the other, we're going to get it. We will keep you safe. We will make you rich, and together we will take Greenland to heights like you have never thought possible before. It's a very small population, but very, very large piece of land and very, very important for military security. America is once again standing strong against the forces of radical Islamic terrorism. 3.5 years ago, ISIS terrorists killed 13 American service members and countless others in the Abbey Gate bombing during the disastrous and incompetent withdrawal from Afghanistan. Not that they were withdrawing, it was the way they withdrew. Perhaps the most embarrassing moment in the history of our country. Tonight I am pleased to announce that we have just apprehended the top terrorist responsible for that atrocity, and he is right now on his way here to face the swift sword of American justice. And I want to thank especially the government of Pakistan for helping arrest this monster. This was a very momentous day for those 13 families who I actually got to know very well, most of them, whose children were murdered, and the many people that were so badly, over 42 people, so badly injured on that fateful day in Afghanistan. What a horrible day. Such incompetence was shown. That when Putin saw what happened, I guess he said, wow, maybe this is my chance. That's how bad it was. Should have never happened. Grossly incompetent people. I spoke to many of the parents and loved ones, and they're all in our hearts tonight. Just spoke to them on the phone. We had a big call. Every one of them called, and everybody was on the line, and they didn't but cry with happiness. They were very happy, as happy as you can be under those circumstances. Their child, brother, sister, son, daughter was killed for no reason whatsoever. In the Middle East, we're bringing back our hostages from Gaza. In my first term, we achieved one of the most groundbreaking peace agreements in generations, the Abraham Accords. And now we're going to build on that foundation to create a more peaceful and prosperous future for the entire region. A lot of things are happening in the Middle East. People have been talking about that so much lately with everything going on with Ukraine and Russia. But a lot of things are happening in the Middle East. It's a rough neighborhood, actually. I'm also working tirelessly to end the savage conflict in Ukraine. Millions of Ukrainians and Russians have been needlessly killed or wounded in this horrific and brutal conflict with no end in sight. The United States has sent hundreds of billions of dollars to support Ukraine's defense with no security, with no anything. Do you want to keep it going for another 5 years? Yeah, you would say Pocahontas says yes. $2,000 people are being killed every single week. More than that. They're Russian young people. They're Ukrainian young people. They're not Americans. But I want it to stop. Meanwhile, Europe has sadly spent more money buying Russian oil and gas than they have spent on defending Ukraine, by far. Think of that. They've spent more buying Russian oil and gas than they have defending. And we've spent perhaps $350 billion, like taking candy from a baby. That's what happened. And they've spent $100 billion. What a difference that is. And we have an ocean separating us, and they don't. But we're getting along very well with them, and lots of good things are happening. Biden has authorized more money in this fight than Europe has spent by billions and billions of dollars. It's hard to believe that they wouldn't have stopped it and said at some point, come on, let's equalize. You got to be equal to us. But that didn't happen. Earlier today, I received an important letter from President Zelensky of Ukraine. The letter reads, Ukraine is ready to come to the negotiating table as soon as possible to bring lasting peace closer. Nobody wants peace more than the Ukrainians, he said. My team and I stand ready to work under President Trump's strong leadership to get a peace that lasts. We do really value how much America has done to help Ukraine maintain its sovereignty and independence. Regarding the agreement on minerals and security, Ukraine is ready to sign it at any time that is convenient for you. I appreciate that he sent this letter, just got it a little while ago. Simultaneously, we've had serious discussions with Russia and have received strong signals that they are ready for peace. Wouldn't that be beautiful? Wouldn't that be beautiful? Wouldn't that be beautiful? It's time to stop this madness. It's time to halt the killing. It's time to end this senseless war. If you want to end wars, you have to talk to both sides. Nearly 4 years ago, amid rising tensions, a history teacher named Mark Fogel was detained in Russia and sentenced to 14 years in a penal colony. Rough stuff. The previous administration barely lifted a finger to help him. They knew he was innocent, but they had no idea where to begin. But last summer, I promised his 95-year-old mother, Malphine, that we would bring her boy safely back home. After 22 days in office, I did just that, and they are here tonight. To Mark and his great mom, we are delighted to have you safe and sound and with us. As fate would have it, Mark Fogel was born in a small rural town in Butler, Pennsylvania. Have you heard of it? Where his mother has lived for the past 78 years. I just happened to go there last July 13th for a rally. That was not pleasant. And that is where I met his beautiful mom right before I walked onto that stage. And I told her I would not forget what she said about her son. And I never did I? Never forgot. Less than 10 minutes later, at that same rally, gunfire rang out, and a sick and deranged assassin unloaded 8 bullets from his sniper's perch into a crowd of many thousands of people. My life was saved by a fraction of an inch, but some were not so lucky. Corey Comparator was a firefighter, a veteran, a Christian, a husband, a devoted father, and above all, a protector. When the sound of gunshots pierced the air, it was a horrible sound. Corey knew instantly what it was and what to do. He threw himself on top of his wife and daughters and shielded them from the bullets with his own body. Corey was hit really hard. You know the story from there. He sacrificed his life to save theirs. 2 others, very fine people, were also seriously hit. But thankfully, with the help of 2 great country doctors, we thought they were gone and they were saved. So those doctors had great talent. We're joined by Corey's wife, Helen, who was his high school sweetheart, and their two beloved daughters, Allison and Kaylee. Thank you. To Helen, Allison, and Kaylee, Corey is looking down on his three beautiful ladies right now, and he is cheering you on. He loves you. He is cheering you on. Corey was taken from us much too soon, but his destiny was to leave us all with a shining example of the selfless devotion of a true American patriot. It was love like Corey's that built our country, and it's love like Corey's that is going to make our country more majestic than ever before. I believe that my life was saved that day in Butler for a very good reason. I was saved by God to make America great again. I believe that. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. From the patriots of Lexington and Concord to the heroes of Gettysburg and Normandy, from the warriors who crossed the Delaware to the trailblazers who climbed the Rockies, and from the legends who soared at Kitty Hawk to the astronauts who touched the moon. Americans have always been the people who defied all odds, transcended all dangers, made the most extraordinary sacrifices, and did whatever it took to defend our children, our country, and our freedom. And as we have seen in this chamber tonight, that same strength, faith, love, and spirit is still alive and thriving in the hearts of the American people. Despite the best efforts of those who would try to censor us, silence us, break us, destroy us, Americans are today a proud, free, sovereign, and independent nation that will always be free, and we will fight for it till death. We will never let anything happen to our beloved country, because we are a country of doers, dreamers, fighters, and survivors. Our ancestors crossed a vast ocean, strode into the unknown wilderness, and carved their fortunes from the rock and soil of a perilous and very dangerous frontier. They chased our destiny across a boundless continent. They built the railroads, laid the highways, and graced the world with American marvels like the Empire State Building, the mighty Hoover Dam, and the towering Golden Gate Bridge. They lit the world with electricity, broke free of the force of gravity, fired up the engines of American industry, vanquished the communists, fascists, and Marxists all over the world, and gave us countless modern wonders sculptured out of iron, glass, and steel. We stand on the shoulders of these pioneers who won and built the modern age, these workers who poured their sweat into the skylines of our cities, these warriors who shed their blood on fields of battle and gave everything they had for our rights and for our freedom. Now it is our time to take up the righteous cause of American liberty. And it is our turn to take America's destiny into our own hands and begin the most thrilling days in the history of our country. This will be our greatest era. With God's help, over the next 4 years, we are going to lead this nation even higher, and we are going to forge the freest, most advanced, most dynamic, and most dominant civilization ever to exist on the face of this earth. We are going to create the highest quality of life, build the safest and wealthiest and healthiest and most vital communities anywhere in the world. We are going to conquer the vast frontiers of science, and we are going to lead humanity into space and plant the American flag on the planet Mars and even far beyond. And through it all, we are going to rediscover the unstoppable power of the American spirit. And we are going to renew unlimited promise of the American dream. Every single day, we will stand up and we will fight, fight, fight for the country our citizens believe in and for the country our people deserve. My fellow Americans, get ready for an incredible future, because the golden age of America has only just begun. It will be like nothing that has ever been seen before. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless America.
President Trump touting what he called the swift and inaction taken by his administration these last 6 weeks, saying his administration is just getting... Let's go to our Lisa Desjardins, who is in the chamber. Lisa, and for our viewers, we should say you have this vantage point just atop the rostrum there. You were able to see things that we couldn't during the speech, especially the moments of Democratic protest. We saw Texas Congressman Al Green at the beginning of the speech heckle the president. He was removed by the House Sergeant at Arms. Give us a sense of what you saw and your reactions based on the speech and the conversations you've been having with lawmakers throughout the day.
Well, what we witnessed here was an unprecedented speech for a number of reasons. One, by my count, that was the longest presidential address to Congress we've seen since 1964 at least. But the moment where Al Green stood and interrupted and refused to leave is something that none of us have ever seen in this chamber. I have to go back to Civil War times to see something like that. He was removed from the chamber. He was not the only Democrat that was removed from the chamber. 2 others were removed later, I've confirmed. And then we saw rolling protests with signs. Some of those signs, as you probably saw on TV, had to do with Elon Musk, saying Musk steals. Others having to do with Medicaid or protecting veterans. Others had signs they were handwriting themselves. One, Rashida Tlaib, the congresswoman, had a sign that she was writing throughout. At one point on the immigration section, for example, saying, "What about the immigrants who worked for you?" So Democrats tried not to boo. There was booing. Their plan was to not boo, but that did happen. But instead, they were trying to register their protest, both these are signs. But I think they will be remembered for Al standing up. On the other end, I want to say I was watching Kash Patel, who's sitting very close to me, the new FBI director, known for his ardent support of Donald Trump. He barely clapped during the entire speech. He gave the impression of sort of someone trying to be outside of the partisanship that you felt in this chamber. Republicans, as you could see, elated with this speech. It was the longest speech, as I said, one of the longest in history. But usually you see them nodding off, losing track, and I did not see that tonight. Everyone was paying, on the Republican side, very close attention. You won't be surprised that Democrats left a suit the moment it was over. There was a mass Democratic exit from the chamber.
President Trump continues to make his way out of the chamber there, greeting a number of Republican lawmakers as he leaves. Stay with us. We should know, too, we'll bring you the Democrats' response in just a few moments as well. I believe our Laura Barone-Lopez are still with us. She is also on Capitol Hill tonight. Laura, as you listened along to the president's remarks there, a number of points we've heard several times, certainly core, central parts of his campaigns over the years as well, on issues of immigration, some of the anti-transgender messaging as well. Also notes about Russia's war in Ukraine and some economic plans moving forward. What stood out to you as someone who covers this White House around the clock?
Well, as you noted, Amna, a sizable part of the speech was devoted to the president talking about his immigration plans, notably what he says he wants to launch the largest deportation plans that the country has ever seen. We should note, though, that currently the pace of deportation flights right now for this administration are very similar to the number of deportation flights under the prior administration. One of the other things that stood out, Amna, was also how much the president talked about Elon Musk and Doge. That's the so-called Department of Government Efficiency. And he claimed that Doge has, quote, found hundreds of billions of dollars of fraud. The Doge and Elon Musk have not provided any evidence of fraud to date. And in fact, their wall of receipts online actually has a number of math errors. And just recently, they erased some $400 billion in savings that they said that they had found. And the president also repeated false claims about FEMA. He said illegally sending money to house migrants in New York City in hotels. That's not true. That money was allocated and voted on by Congress. And as many of these things that Doge is cutting and slashing, this is money that was voted on by Congress, sometimes in bipartisan ways. And so the president and Elon Musk have repeatedly claimed that the things that they are cutting is fraud, but have provided no evidence. And they are clawing back this money, which some constitutional scholars have raised could very well be in violation of the Impoundment Control Act, Amna.
And Laura, we also heard the president in his speech decry fraud in the Social Security payment system, suggesting that there's somebody who's 300 years old who is on the dole there. That's been debunked. Remind us of what the truth is there.
That's right, Jeff. So when it comes to Social Security, the president claiming that there are millions of people who are dead that are getting payments is just not true. Is there error across Social Security? Yes, there is. According to the Inspector General in a recent report out last year, there's about less than 1% of improper payments made by the Social Security Administration, and a lot of those payments are overpayments to people who are alive, so not to millions of dead individuals who are still taking Social Security payments.
Laura Barone-Lopez on Capitol Hill for us tonight. Back here at the table, let's get some takeaways from our panel, who, of course, are still with us. Tiffany Smiley, kick us off here. A number of messages you heard there delivered by the president. I will say it was probably bipartisan support for one of his earliest sentences when he said, "The first few weeks of my presidency have seen swift and unrelenting action." No one would disagree with that. How successful that action has been, I think there's debate over that. But what did you take away from the president's remarks?
You know, I had the pleasure of being in attendance in 2017 for his very first joint address. And I have to say this felt different. He has an energy and a vigor and a fight about him that he's moving forward swiftly and quickly. It's almost as if he, like I said when I opened the show, he learned in the first 4 years because he ran into roadblocks consistently in trying to get his agenda across. And now he's just blowing through the roadblocks. He's found a way to deliver for the American people very quickly, very fast. He addressed, his wins. He came and he talked briefly about Doge, not a whole lot, but he also came with receipts. In listing out where the waste, the fraud, and the abuse is. I think the line that really stood out to me, and it was at the beginning, and it set the tone for the whole speech, was when he was saying, the media, and I'm paraphrasing here, but the media and Democrats kept saying, we need more legislation to secure the border. We need more legislation to secure the border. And he simply said, all you needed was a new president. And that is strong. And he laid out the future, what we can expect. He touched on tariffs. He admitted that there's going to be some pain points. I think he understands that you can't get America back if you don't put pressure on manufacturing, if you don't put pressure on Mexico and Canada to help us secure our border and stop the flow of fentanyl that's coming in and killing hundreds of thousands of Americans. So I thought it was bold. I thought it was strong, courageous. He also addressed common sense policies that are back for the American people. So it was moving.
We're set to hear in a few minutes from the newly elected Michigan Senator Elissa Slotkin, who's going to provide the Democratic response. It was interesting, though, Amy, how President Trump used those moments, those early moments of Democratic protest against Democrats to suggest that they were somehow obstructionist and that they were somehow against the many things that he views as popular, like immigration.
Like immigration, which it is. His moves on immigration have been, I don't know if the word embrace is correct, but they're seen more positively than many of the things that he's doing. Cutting government waste is popular. Many of the things that he talked about with DEI or banning transgendered athletes, also popular. But the thing that I just keep coming back to is what we talked about at the very beginning. David and I both made this comment about wanting to hear more about the economy and how this is actually going to work. For all of the tumult that these tariffs have caused initially, and we don't know how long they're going to last or what it's going to look like, precious little time was spent on how this is actually going to work. Tiffany's right. He said something about there'll be a little disturbance. It won't be much. Tariffs are about protecting the soul of our country. But given the amount of time and energy he spent on outlining many other of his priorities, it sure seems like this could have gotten a lot more.
We've got less than 2 minutes to go before we hear from Senator Slotkin there. So, David, let's give us your quick takeaways. John, since we can't hear from you now, we'll come back on the back end. Go ahead.
First, just politically and then substantively. Politically, I think there's a reason he's dominating American politics right now. It was a good speech from a political point of view. Lots of good moments. If you're a normal person, you read all the stuff he's doing, you think, oh, that sounds good to me. And so politically, I thought very good. Democrats, I think, look bad. They look bad sitting there. They look worse when they protested. So, yeah, not great. Then quickly on substance, then we'll get to Jonathan. You talked about the Social Security lies. Like South Korea allegedly has huge tariffs. We struck a trade deal with South Korea in 2008, and they have no tariffs on our manufactured goods and teeny tiny tariffs on a lot of other stuff. So a lot of what he says is just not true, and that could turn out to hurt him, because if you have a guy who doesn't know what he's talking about, presumably there's some negative consequences there.
Jonathan?
Disagree that Democrats looked bad. I actually think Democrats looked better than I thought they would. I thought they were smart to sit there and show their displeasure with what the president was saying. Congressman Green being ejected from the chamber, the man was acting on his convictions. Politically, sure, fine. The president's reflecting the people who voted for him. But honestly, I thought it was dull, boring, and a festival of meanness, as I expected.
We're going to have a lot more to talk about on the back end. For now, we're going to take you live to the Democratic response. That's from first-term Michigan Senator Elissa Slotkin.
Hi, everyone. I'm Elissa Slotkin. I'm honored to have the opportunity to speak tonight. It's late, so I promise to be a lot shorter than what you just watched. I won't take it personally if you've never heard of me. I'm the new senator from the great state of Michigan, where I grew up. I've been in public service my entire life, because I happened to be in New York City on 9/11 when the Twin Towers came down. Before the smoke cleared, I knew I wanted to make a life in national security. I was recruited by the CIA and did 3 tours in Iraq alongside the military. In between, I worked at the White House under President Bush and President Obama, 2 very different leaders who both believed that America is exceptional. You can find that same sense of patriotism here in Wyandotte, Michigan, where I'm speaking from tonight. It's a working-class town just south of Detroit. President Trump and I both won here in November. It might not seem like it, but plenty of places like this still exist across the United States. Places where people believe that if you work hard and play by the rules, you should do well and your kids should do better. It reminds me of how I grew up. My dad was a lifelong Republican, my mom a lifelong Democrat. But it was never a big deal, because we had shared values that were bigger than any one party. We just went through another fraught election season. Americans made it clear that prices are too high and that the government needs to be more responsive to their needs. America wants change, but there's a responsible way to make change and a reckless way. And we can make that change without forgetting who we are as a country and as a democracy. So that's what I'm going to lay out tonight. Because whether you're from Wyandotte or Wichita, most Americans share 3 core beliefs: that the middle class is the engine of our country, that strong national security protects us from harm, and that our democracy, no matter how messy, is unparalleled and worth fighting for. Let's start with the economy. Michigan literally invented the middle class, the revolutionary idea that you could work at an auto plant and afford the car you were building. That's the American dream. And in order to expand and protect the middle class, we have to do a few basic things. We need to bring down the price of things we spend the most money on: groceries, housing, healthcare. We need to make more things in America with good-paying union jobs and bring our supply chains back home from places like China. We need to give American businesses the certainty they need to invest and create the jobs of the future. And we need a tax system that's fair for people who don't happen to make $1 billion. Look, the president talked a big game on the economy, but it's always important to read the fine print. So, do his plans actually help Americans get ahead? Not even close. President Trump is trying to deliver an unprecedented giveaway to his billionaire friends. He's on the hunt to find trillions of dollars to pass along to the wealthiest in America. And to do that, he's going to make you pay in every part of your life. Grocery and home prices are going up, not down, and he hasn't laid out a credible plan to deal with either of those. His tariffs on allies like Canada will raise prices on energy, lumber, and cars, and start a trade war that will hurt manufacturing and farmers. Your premiums and prescriptions will cost more because the math doesn't work without going after your health care. Meanwhile, for those keeping score, the national debt is going up, not down. And if he's not careful, he could walk us right into a recession. And one more thing. In order to pay for his plan, he could very well come after your retirement, the Social Security, Medicare, and VA benefits you worked your whole life to earn. The president claims he won't, but Elon Musk just called Social Security the biggest Ponzi scheme of all time. While we're on the subject of Elon Musk, is there anyone in America who is comfortable with him and his gang of 20-year-olds using their own computer servers to poke through your tax returns, your health information, and your bank accounts? No oversight, no protections against cyber attack, no guardrails on what they do with your private data. We need a more efficient government. You want to cut waste? I'll help you do it. But change doesn't need to be chaotic or make us less safe. The mindless firing of people who work to protect our nuclear weapons, keep our planes from crashing, and conduct the research that finds the cure for cancer, only to rehire them 2 days later, no CEO in America could do that without being summarily fired. Okay, so we've talked about economic security. How about national security? Let's start with the border. As someone who spent my whole career protecting our homeland, every country deserves to know who and what is coming across its border. Period. Democrats and Republicans should all be for that. But securing the border without actually fixing our broken immigration system is dealing with the symptom and not the disease. America is a nation of immigrants. We need a functional system keyed to the needs of our economy that allows vetted people to come and work here legally. So I look forward to the president's plan on that. Because here's the thing. Today's world is deeply interconnected. Migration, cyber threats, AI, environmental destruction, terrorism. One nation cannot face these issues alone. We need friends in all corners, and our safety depends on it. President Trump loves to say peace through strength. That's actually a line he stole from Ronald Reagan. But let me tell you, after the spectacle that just took place in the Oval Office last week, Reagan must be rolling in his grave. We all want an end to the war in Ukraine, but Reagan understood that true strength required America to combine our military and economic might with moral clarity. And that scene in the Oval Office wasn't just a bad episode of reality TV. It summed up Trump's whole approach to the world. He believes in cozying up to dictators like Vladimir Putin and kicking our friends like the Canadians in the teeth. He sees American leadership as merely a series of real estate transactions. As a Cold War kid, I'm thankful it was Reagan and not Trump in office in the 1980s. Trump would have lost us the Cold War. Donald Trump's actions suggest that in his heart, he doesn't believe we're an exceptional nation. He clearly doesn't think we should lead the world. Look, America is not perfect, but I stand with the majority of Americans who believe we are still exceptional, unparalleled. And I would rather have American leadership over Chinese or Russian leadership any day of the week. Because for generations, America has offered something better. Our security and our prosperity, yes, but our democracy, our very system of government, has been the aspiration of the world. And right now, it's at risk. It's at risk when the president decides you can pick and choose what rules you want to follow, when he ignores court orders and the Constitution itself, or when elected leaders stand by and just let it happen. But it's also at risk when the president pits Americans against each other, when he demonizes those who are different and tells certain people they shouldn't be included. Because America is not just a patch of land between two oceans. We are more than that. Generations have fought and died to secure the fundamental rights that define us. Those rights and the fight for them make us who we are. We're a nation of strivers, risk takers, innovators, and we are never satisfied. That is America's superpower. And look, I've lived and worked in many countries. I've seen democracies flicker out. I've seen what life is like when a government is rigged. You can't open a business without paying off a corrupt official. You can't criticize the guys in charge without getting a knock at the door in the middle of the night. So as much as we need to make our government more responsive to our lives today, don't for one moment fool yourself that democracy isn't precious and worth saving. But how do we actually do that? I know a lot of you have been asking that question. First, don't tune out. It's easy to be exhausted, but America needs you now more than ever. If previous generations had not fought for this democracy, where would we be today? Second, hold your elected officials, including me, accountable. Watch how they're voting. Go to town halls and demand they take action. That's as American as apple pie. Third, organize. Pick just one issue you're passionate about and engage. And doom scrolling doesn't count. Join a group that cares about your issue and act. And if you can't find one, start one. Some of the most important movements in our history have come from the bottom up. In closing, we all know that our country is going through something right now. We're not sure what the next day is going to hold, let alone the next decade. But this isn't the first time we've experienced significant and tumultuous change as a country. I'm a student of history, and we've gone through periods of political instability before. And ultimately, we've chosen to keep changing this country for the better. But every single time, we've only gotten through those moments because of two things: engaged citizens and principled leaders. Engaged citizens who do a little bit more than they're used to doing to fight for the things that they care about, and principled leaders who are ready to receive the ball and do something about it. So thank you tonight for caring about your country. Just by watching, you qualify as engaged citizens. And I promise that I and my fellow Democrats will do everything in our power to be the principled leaders that you deserve. Good night, everyone.
That was the Democratic response to President Trump's speech delivered there by first-term Michigan Senator Elissa Slotkin. Jonathan, she's just one of 4 Democratic senators who won in a state that was carried by President Trump, and that delivering that response is as fraught a position as you can find. It can quickly become the stuff of Saturday Night Live spoofs.
Right.
How did she do?
I thought this is one of the best responses. I think responses are terrible, whether Republicans do them or Democrats do them, because they're always seemingly pre-written, pre-baked, and they don't seem to jibe with what you just heard from the President of the United States in general. But what Senator Slotkin did there, I thought, was really effective. She acknowledged the problems, the reason why President Trump got elected, acknowledged what she needs to do as a senator, what Democrats need to do. But overall, I think President Trump's speech spoke to the people who voted for him. As Tiffany discussed, Senator Slotkin's response spoke to the people who didn't vote for President Trump, spoke to Democrats who are hungry for someone to articulate the Democratic vision and version of what should be done. And her rules of the road, don't doom scroll, get out and do something, pick one thing. Democrats have been looking. I get stopped all the time. What do I do? What do I do? She just laid out for people what they need to do. And so I think for the first time, honestly, I was bored by the president's joint address. Senator Slotkin's address perked me up. Maybe because I agree with 99% of what she said. I get that. But I do think when you put those two speeches together, you have a clear view of the clear dividing line in this country right now.
And David, we also heard her make this point that she's all for change, but change doesn't need to be chaotic or make us feel less safe. That's a direct quote. That could be a line that Democrats settle on. Do you see it that way?
Yeah, I thought her messaging was outstanding for Democrats. She did not sound like she was coming out of some progressive activist group in D.C. or some faculty lounge. She sounded like somebody from Michigan who worked in national security. And the line, we can have change, but it should be responsible and not reckless, that's a good non-ideological line for them to take. She hit the main issues like economy, national security. So I agree. I thought it was the first sign that the Democrats are coming to a message that could appeal to somebody who voted for Donald Trump.
Except that was kind of their message it was their message in 2018, which was successful, but it was also their message in 2024 was he's too chaotic, he's too dangerous, this is too risky, and voters were like, yeah, I'm going to take that risk.
But there's evidence now.
Well, that's the question.
We're only 43 days in. Wait until Donald Trump starts to deliver results. And
that's going to be the question is, in a year, is this message, change doesn't need to be chaotic, is that going to hold?